Jay Lipp, Gaylord Meyer, Eric Sunman, Pete Ambrose, thank you. Catherine Burstein, Nathaniel Schindler, Jeff Steele, Keith Varian,
Here.
Ed Bateson,
Here.
Sam Cargill,
Here.
Hank Ferentz,
Here.
Dave McKenzie,
Here.
Mary McCullough.
Here.
Mr. Bateson, would you like to introduce the new member in District 3?
Yes, thank you, Madam Clerk. Ed Bates in District 3. I'd like to introduce our newest representative replacing Laura Devlin is Sam Cargill of Bronson Road. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Heather Dean. Present. Joe DiMartino. Bill Gerber.
Here.
Joe Palmer.
Here.
Cindy Waldron. Here. Josh Garskoff.
Here.
Lauren O'Brien.
Here.
Andrew Semmel.
Here.
Ruth Smay. Carol Way.
Here.
Julie Gottlieb.
Here.
Ms. Gottlieb, do you have an announcement to make?
I do.
Hi, Mike. I'd like to...
Hello? No?
Yes,
Yeah?
you're good.
Okay, sorry. I'd like to welcome Joe Siebert, who will be replacing Sheila Marmion in District 6. Joe's on senior place.
Alan Marks. Joe Siebert.
Here.
Jay Walk.
Here.
Liz Ezema. Here. Jen Hochberg. Here. Kevin Hopkins.
Here.
Eric Newman.
Here.
Bill Peters.
Here.
Al Schwartz.
Here.
Kathy Braun. Here. Alex Durrell.
Here.
Jason Lee.
Here.
Tom McCarthy.
Here.
Jeff Milrano.
Here.
Pamela Iacono.
Here.
Ellen Jacob. Here. Lauren McCardle. Here. Carol Pontrelli. Here. Chris Timniak.
Here.
Brian Caparelli.
Here.
Brian Barton.
Brian Farden.
Ray Newberger. Bill Perugini.
Here.
Bruce Ryan.
Here.
Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you please remain standing for a moment of silence? I've just received word that there was a train accident on the Metro North line, Harlem line. So if you could keep those people in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our first item of business this evening is to hear an address on the state of the town by the First Selectman. Mr. Tetreault.
Thank you. And thank you, Madam Moderator, members of the Board of Selectmen, members of the Board of Finance, members of our representative town meeting, and other elected officials, and members of the public, for the opportunity to provide this update on our town. We've accomplished a great deal in the last year. We also have a lot to look forward to in the next year and beyond. I want to thank all of those that have contributed so much to the past year. My colleagues on the Board of Selectmen, Kevin Kiley and Kristen McCarthy-Vahey. I also want to welcome our newest member to the Board of Selectmen, Sheila Marmion, who is replacing State Representative McCarthy-Vahey. I want to give a big thank you to all that volunteered serving on our boards and commissions, who give so freely of their time and are so dedicated to helping our town be the best in the state. I want to especially thank the town department managers and employees who have helped raise service levels and manage our costs to keep Fairfield a great value for all. We would not be the town we are if we didn't have a top quality school system. Thank you to the Board of Ed, Central Office, our teachers, and our administrators. Year after year, you manage to keep our students engaged, learning, and reaching new heights. Our schools are one of the leading contributors to making Fairfield a great value. I'd like to take a look first at economic development. This is a critical function for our local job growth and for providing balance to our tax revenue. We have really made some great progress. We're working with businesses in 5 business centers: downtown, Southport, Greenfield Hill, Black Rock Turnpike, and Grassmere. The Fairfield Chamber of Commerce has new leadership, a renewed energy, and is a welcome partner to our economic development team. We've expanded our sidewalk summer sales into downtown Fairfield by adding other neighborhood centers. We've also maximized the draw by holding it on the same weekend as Pequot Library's famous summer book sale and the Connecticut Challenge annual bike ride. All these events work together to promote Fairfield. Between all 3, there is truly something special for everyone. We've added the similar sidewalk sales events throughout the year, our holiday shop and stroll, along with our spring shop and stroll. Each of these has added features and entertainment to attract even more shoppers to our retail merchants who have been enthusiastic supporters. Let me give a special thank you to Mark Barnhart, our Director of Economic Development, for his leadership and creativity in putting these together. Our Restaurant Week, in only its 3rd year, has been a sensational hit and has already developed a statewide reputation. While visiting with U.S. Senator Chris Murphy, one of his staff came up to point out that the word on the street is Connecticut is Fairfield is a place to open a restaurant. Thank you to all the sponsors, restaurants, and merchants that have made this one of the best weeks of the year. A key building block in Fairfield, in making Fairfield an arts and cultural center, is the Fairfield Theater Company. FTC is a phenomenal draw to people throughout the region to come and dine and shop in Fairfield. They are in the midst of a major expansion to add a 600-seat auditorium next to Stage 1. They are doing their part to keep our town as the place to visit. This expansion project is being privately funded through their ongoing capital campaign. Thank you to the FTC Board and Executive Director John Reed for their vision and their leadership. Our town is the envy of the region. Fairfield needs to keep moving forward. As the famous baseball pitcher Satchel Paige was quoted when asked about the secret of his pitching skill and his longevity, he said, "Don't look back. Something might be gaining on you." While much of our town has been built out, we have 2 major commercial development opportunities: the former Exide Battery Factory and the Fairfield Metro Center. The cleanup of Mill River is well underway. This is a 2- or 3-year project and is the critical first step to the development of the Exide factory site on the Post Road. Once this cleanup is complete, there is a developer waiting to get started on making this long-term brownfield a productive part of our town and a productive part of our tax base. This cleanup is proceeding under the watchful eye of our Conservation Commission, the Harbor Management Commission, our Shellfish Commission, and the neighborhood group Fair Plan, all who work together to review and improve the proposed cleanup plan. The Fairfield Metro Center development has been stalled for several years. I've reached out to the developer to discuss what is needed to move this forward. His view is that the current plan won't work in today's market. He would like to take a look at a revised plan. Importantly, he also wants to make sure that he has community support. We're discussing an approach that would involve key stakeholders and members of the community. It would involve getting interested parties engaged in the process and having their input during the planning process. We'll have more updates on this in the months ahead. We're also working with the Fairfield Museum and History Center on a vision for our historic town hall campus. Fairfield is unique when compared to many Connecticut towns. We have significant historic sites within walking and biking distance of our downtown center and train station. We are currently applying for grants to find a planning study for this purpose. We have a tremendous opportunity to promote our heritage. We have plans to update Old Town Hall and Burr Mansion. We are in the midst of updating the Sun Tavern, where George Washington dined and spent the night. That's right, George Washington slept here. The Old Academy Schoolhouse was recently updated by our Eunice Denny Burr chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. All these sites surrounding the Fairfield Museum and History Center create a critical mass of opportunities to promote our town. I've also had the chance to begin conversations with several members of the Historic District Commission about a longer-term vision for preserving Fairfield's historic districts and our historic homes. During a recent visit to Charleston, South Carolina, I observed a community with a proud heritage, great restaurants, lots of culture, beautiful historic homes, located on the coast, and having a booming tourist economy. Sound familiar? Two things stood out to me that we are missing here in Fairfield. One, Charleston formed foundations to purchase and maintain select historic homes. These homes are open to the public, providing a source of revenue and a way to keep their heritage alive. Second, they have hotels and bed and breakfasts that allow people to visit longer, enjoy more amenities, and importantly, spend more money. I will be continuing these conversations with the Historic District Commission and others on how to develop a plan to help property owners preserve their homes and keep our history also part of our future. Fairfield has clearly established as the location for the first airplane flight. Fairfield, first in flight. Kind of has a nice ring to it. We have formed a Gustav Whitehead Committee, chaired by Andy Koch, to meet the challenge of planning a way for our town to honor the accomplishments of Gustav Whitehead here in Fairfield. I've also asked the committee to work with Bridgeport and Stratford to integrate our efforts into an initiative called the Whitehead Trail. This will boost tourism and economic development throughout the region. Fairfield, first in flight. This is historic. This is an event that should make us all proud. We really want everyone in town to join in promoting Fairfield and this milestone. I'd love to see Fairfield University and Sacred Heart competing for the right to challenge the University of North Carolina to a debate on the topic, Gustav Whitehead was really the first to fly an airplane. I'd love to see our high schools, Ludlow Ward, Fairfield Prep, Notre Dame, competing for the right to challenge, I guess you'd call it Kitty Hawk High, to a similar debate, all as part of an ongoing effort to promote Fairfield and to have some fun doing it. We want to continue to build on our town-gown relationships with both universities. Sacred Heart proved to be a very generous and gracious host for our town's 375th anniversary Grand Gala. Fairfield University has created a small business incubator called FAME, which stands for Fairfield University Accelerator and Mentoring Enterprise. This is a joint venture between Fairfield University, Cleban Properties, and the town. This is a very significant initiative to help provide entrepreneurs with the resources and skills they need to survive the early years of product development. One of the critical needs in our state is more jobs. For years, it has been shown that the majority of job growth in our country comes from small business development. Here in Fairfield, we're doing something about it, and FAME is part of that solution. We've just finished a year-long 375th anniversary celebration, and what a great time we had. So much happened. The painted fire hydrants standing guard in our town thanks to Gene Harrison. The Chamber of Commerce birthday cake contest to select the baker for the official town birthday cake at the Grand Gala. The town-wide food drive, which was supported by virtually everybody in town and collected almost 20,000 pounds of food. Thank you to probate judge Dan Caruso for his inspiration for this event. We had the spring shop and stroll throughout our town. We had the Memorial Day Parade and our award-winning 375th anniversary float. We held Fairfield's first Family Fun Fest, hosted on the Town Hall Green by the Fairfield Museum, the Fairfield Theater Company, the Economic Development Department, and the Chamber of Commerce. We had another great 4th of July fireworks hosted by our Parks and Rec Department. Our summer sidewalk sales days, combined with the Pequot book sale and the Connecticut Challenge bike ride, all the last weekend in July, and what an amazing weekend that was. The 113th anniversary of Gustav Whitehead's first flight. We even had a replica of his Condor airplane displayed on Sherman Green. We had Bethel's kosher barbecue that fed 2,000 people a kosher meal. I never knew kosher tasted that good. The first ever town employee wiffle ball tournament, honoring Fairfield as the birth of wiffle ball. I have to say it was won by our Public Works Department. Our Always Tasty Restaurant Week, that's grown to almost 40 restaurants participating in the celebration. Our 375th Grand Gala, held at Sacred Heart University's William Pitt Center, that was transformed for the evening, a truly historic event. And special thanks to the Fairfield Museum and History Center that seem to have anniversary events every week throughout the year. Every one of these events helped promote our town and helped us all enjoy our town's 375th anniversary. Special thanks to co-chairs Betsy Brown and Bob Hojanaki, and especially another big thank you to our Grand Gala co-chairs Julia DeMeo, Marlene Batista, and Lee Crouch. We continue to be one of the leading towns in the state in energy conservation and sustainability. This is good for the environment, good for the economy, and good for our expense budget. In 2015, and each year thereafter, the town will save almost $2.5 million a year. That'll be $1.3 million either by energy conservation or by generating our own electricity, another $900,000 from the change of heating fuel to natural gas, and other improvements that will save an additional $270,000. To put this in perspective, this amounts to approximately $25 million in savings over the next 10 years. As I've said before, Ed Bowman from our Public Works Department has made a real contribution to our town. Ed has become an expert at finding grants from both United Illuminating and the state to help pay for the capital improvements to achieve these savings. We have a new director at our senior center. This was filled by the very capable Julie DeMarco. She established her value right from the first day. We need the extra help these days because we have about 2,000 seniors now registered on our member database, a program called My Senior Center. This is up from just 500 members a couple years ago. We have regularly scheduled daily activities, plus some on weeknights and on most weekends. Anybody played a pickleball game yet? Every Saturday morning. This is part of the expansion of services that was requested in our 2012 survey of seniors. With Julie helping keep the activities and energy at the center, Terry Giegengak, our Human Services Director, can now focus on the delivery of social services and long-term plans for our Social Services Department and the Senior Center. These are the services we offer to those in our community most in need. I'm thrilled with the progress we're making in this area. Our financial outlook. The clearest measure of our financial performance is to look at what one rating agency had to say. Town of Fairfield has strong budgetary flexibility, has strong budgetary performance, has very strong liquidity providing very strong cash levels, very strong financial management with good financial policies, very strong debt and contingent liability position driven mostly by the town's low overall debt position. We have seen this kind of consistent high-quality feedback from the rating agencies since restoring our AAA rating with a stable outlook. We removed the negative outlook, and that was one of my first goals in taking office. For the past 3 years, we've had a declining tax increase. We will continue to focus on tightly controlling our revenue, our debt, and our expenses. This management effort is really paying off. Bob Mayer has done an outstanding job as our Chief Fiscal Officer. We're about halfway through our property tax revaluation. New assessments will be mailed out in December of 2015, and the corresponding tax bills will be sent out in July of 2016. We continue to schedule information sessions for residents to review how this works and to answer any questions. We have our pension board to thank for their careful and dedicated review of both our pension trust funds and our OPEB trust funds. We are committed to fully funding the annual recommended contributions for these funds to meet our long-term obligations. One of the areas we've focused on has been our workers' comp expense. We've reviewed causes provided additional training, and formed safety committees on both the town and Board of Ed side to improve our procedures. This has been a combined effort, and we're experiencing fewer injuries, less lost time, and a decrease in workers' compensation expense for the second consecutive year. We want to recognize and thank our labor unions for their help and their cooperation as we negotiate to find new ways towards managing our future costs. Our Parks and Rec Department had another stellar year. One of their big accomplishments was the completion of the new Tennis and Recreation Center. It not only provides an all-new tennis facility, but also a much-needed replacement to the old, rundown beanery. Importantly, it was financed with private funds. This is a great success story for a private-public partnership. And again, thanks to Jerry Lombardo, our Parks and Rec Director, for putting this all together. Had hoped to talk about Penfield rebuild, but I guess we're going to be hearing about that more tonight. It is hard to mention that the Penfield Pavilion, which used to be Sunhaven Beach Club, was bought by the town in 1978. Penfield 1 was bought first. It was in the mid-'80s that Penfield 2 was added. The town clearly established way back then the need for two options. For 30 years, we've had them both working together. And they've been a great benefit and resource to the town. And 30 years is a lot of experience with both pavilions functioning together and what the impact on a neighborhood is. As always, we're continuing to look for improved service levels. We have a new website that was implemented by the team of Mary Mao from the library staff and Kathleen Griffin from the First Selectman's office. This has provided a much improved and user-friendly website with updated and more complete information. This really allows our residents access to find answers and obtain information 24/7. In addition to these new features, the website has a new citizen service request component. This component allows for a resident to ask a question or tell us about a pothole or any other issue, also 24/7. The question or issue is automatically routed to the correct department. The resident is updated by email, phone, or text until the issue is resolved, so they can track all the progress going through. This approach saves everyone time and provides another way to raise service levels. We've recently started sending out town news and announcements via email. This is a no-cost way for our town to push information out directly to our residents. And for anybody who hasn't signed up, please go to our town website and add your email to our mailing list. By arrangements with People's United Bank, our residents now can pay their taxes at any People's United branch. This expands the number of locations and the hours of operation, making it easier for our residents, all at no additional cost to the town. We're working with the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council to enhance our town's Geographic Information System, or GIS, capability and lower our costs. The GIS maps will be available not only to town departments, but also to our residents through the website. By having much of this system centralized, it saves us money that would otherwise be needed to expand our existing system and replace aging servers. We're also working with the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council to qualify for the Community Rating System, or CRS. This is a longer-term project, but it will allow our flood zone residents to qualify for discounts on their flood insurance premiums. We have adjusted the work week in our marina. Our new marina manager now works weekends during the normal work week, especially during the summer boating season. This allows him to be down at the marina when our boaters are there, and it's been a big boon to communication. Importantly, because the weekend days are part of his normal work week, that's all done with no overtime. We are improving flood mitigation in the beach area. We've received a grant to help with replacing some old tide gates. The new tide gates are considerably larger and more difficult to clog. We are evaluating adding permanent pumping stations to help remove trap waters. As many of you know, much of our beach area drainage is at or below sea level, especially during high tide. This makes any standing water difficult to drain by a purely gravity-based system. The long-term vision for flood control is contained in the draft report prepared jointly by the Public Works Department and the Flood and Erosion Control Board. This has been presented to the Board of Selectmen. It is now going to be presented in a series of public meetings to help everybody understand what is involved and in a comprehensive solution to our flooding issues. We have received just about $5 million in grants to harden and protect our water treatment facility, allowing it to function during future flood events. Many of our beach area residents are still struggling to recover from Storm Sandy. The financial impact of Sandy has left a lasting impression on our beach neighborhoods. FEMA recently began approving hazard mitigation grants for beach area families that are looking to raise their homes. A complete recovery, though, is still years away. The Fairfield Public Library is in the process of updating its 5-year strategic plan. I've learned a lot about our libraries in the past 3 years. I'm continually impressed by the broad range of services offered to our community. When you look at the popularity of both the main branch and the Fairfield Woods branch, which is the busiest branch in the state, I'm told, you realize how much they do to bring our community together. I'm looking forward to see the output of the strategic plan, to learn more about the future of our library and the futures of libraries in general. They're an excellent example of leadership at its best. I'm pleased to see our libraries join with Pequot Library in the spirit of one book, one town, to offer one card, one town. It simplifies life by making it easier to use all of our town's library services. And on behalf of all of us, thank you to Fairfield and Pequot. The main branch of the library, this is a special message to the RTM that I kind of worked into the speech here. The main branch of the library is holding an open house and tour for members of the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM this Saturday at 11 a.m. I hope you'll find time in your schedule to join us this weekend. I can promise you that you'll leave with a new understanding of what the definition of a library is in today's world. Hope to see you all there. Our school system has provided excellence in education year after year. This provides a major part of our foundation for maintaining our property values. We continue to make our most significant financial commitment to our schools. Approximately 63% of the current year budget goes towards supporting education in our town. We continue to work towards providing a safe and secure environment for our students, teachers, and administrators. We added more direct police support this past year, and we are currently reviewing proposals for $1.75 million more in capital costs for security funding. Our school system is continually being recognized for its achievements. It seems like every month we receive another award for excellence in performance by an elementary school, a middle school, a high school, a teacher, or administrator. This week, 7 of our elementary schools were recognized as being in the top 100 statewide. Thank you. I didn't know you could see the next line, including my alma mater, Holland Hill. It was pointed out to me this award came long after I left. Congratulations to our teachers and administrators who made this happen. The town may provide the facilities, but it is our teachers and administrators who provide the education. Thank you. We have some challenges ahead. We have a strong foundation comprised of our community spirit, our volunteerism, and our commitment to work together to meet the challenges ahead. Despite how well we have done and how much we have accomplished, there are significant challenges facing us. Look at what we've faced recently. PCBs in our schools, cell tower installations in our neighborhoods, snowstorms, potential hurricanes and flooding, Ebola preparations, UI and tree cutting, saving the Southport Post Office, and affordable housing options. And perhaps the biggest challenge we're facing is answering the difficult questions. What services do we want to offer our community? How do we want to maintain and improve our proposition that Fairfield is the best value in the state? How do we see our town in 10 or 20 years from now? I'm proposing that we develop a strategic plan as a community to answer these difficult questions. I'll be including funding for this project in the upcoming budget. This will be the first ever town-wide strategic plan. This will take the involvement of key stakeholders and community leaders. This will take engagement by all of our residents. This will not just be about who we are, but where we are going and how do we get there. We have a lot to accomplish to make Fairfield the best it can be for all of us. I do want to repeat, as I've said in the past, as First Selectman, it is my vision to serve all the people of our town, from the students who need a safe environment for an excellent education, to the seniors on fixed incomes who wish to stay here, to the taxpayers who want quality service and reasonable taxes. I'm committed to maintaining Fairfield as the best value in our state. Thank you to everyone for your involvement, your volunteer spirit, and your support of our town. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. First Selectman. Our next item on our call is to receive the report from the First Selectman or his designee on the leases of the town properties. And I believe we have Attorney Lesser here.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess I'm the designee tonight, as I usually am. Nothing much has changed since the past year. You have a spreadsheet that was given to you in your package, and if there are any questions about the leases, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions? Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I sincerely appreciate the new formatting for the lease report. That was incredibly helpful for the body.
That's Connie Nalfi in the Finance Department.
Thank you to the Finance Department for their work on that. Next item is to hear a report from the Blight Officer concerning condemnation and blight, and I believe Mr. Connolly is here.
Good evening, honorable RTM representatives. Thank you for this opportunity to give you my blight prevention report. I look around, there's a lot of familiar faces. Nice to see everybody. I sat at this board, at this RTM for 13 and a half years, so good to see all of you, and thank you for your dedication and service to the community. Does everybody have my blight report? Try to make it short and simple. We made a couple of minor changes, but they were huge to our blight prevention. We invited the zoning enforcement officer to attend our meetings. He does not vote at our meetings, but he attends our meetings, and it's really helped out to have another voice, another input as per zoning. We've also made all of the condemnation officers blight prevention officers. This prevents a clog up, a stoppage at the blight prevention, so that everybody can vote. We don't just need me there. Anybody can do that same type of work. So as you see, we've had a busy year. We've had 32 blight complaints, properties being complained, and 19 of those have been abated. There's 13 remaining. So any questions? Or maybe I shouldn't ask that.
That's
Maybe you should.
perfectly fine. Any questions from the body? Seeing none, Mr. Connolly, thank you very much for your report.
Thank you very much.
Item number 5, which is to act on the minutes of the regular meeting for December 15th, will actually be held over for a month, simply because this is a special meeting and we can't act on them at this time, as I've been informed by the clerk. Item number 6, to fill the vacancy of the Special Legislative Management Committee due to the resignation of Sheila Marmion. And I believe Selectman Marmion would like to speak to this issue.
Hi, everybody. Sheila Marmion, Selectman, and it's my pleasure tonight to nominate Julie Gottlieb, currently RTM District 6, to fill my vacancy as a member on the Special Legislative Management Committee and as Deputy Minority Leader. Julie is thoughtful, bright, and most importantly, committed. So I hope you'll support her nomination. Thank you.
I take it that's a motion to nominate Julie Gottlieb. Is there a second? Representative Zezima. Any discussion? All in favor? Signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, Representative Gottlieb. Item number 7, to hear, consider, and act upon the following reappointment to the Historic District Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Adam Cleaver, I apologize for that. Republican, 280 Hillside Road, term November 2014 to 2019. Mr. Cleaver, are you here? He's not here this evening, but he was at our committee meetings. All in favor of, may I have a motion to approve? Representative Garskoff, seconded by Representative Caffarelli. Is there any discussion? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the body. All in favor? Signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item passes unanimously. Next item, to hear, consider, and act upon the following reappointment of an alternate to the Historic District Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen, Christopher Shea, Republican, 917 Merwins Lane, term November 2014 to 2019, moved by Representative McCullough, seconded by Representative Lipp. Is there any discussion on this item? Mr. Shea, are you here this evening? Thank you. Can you just stand to be recognized? Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Shea? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public? Back to the body. All in favor of Mr. Shea, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Shea. Item number 9, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolved that the bond resolution entitled, "A Resolution Appropriating $6,028,709 for costs associated with the repair and restoration of Penfield Pavilion and authorizing the use of $1,750,000 of insurance proceeds to fund such appropriation and the issuance of bonds to fund the portion of such appropriation not funded by insurance proceeds be and hereby is approved." May I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Dean, seconded by Representative Bateson. Is there any discussion by the body? Excellent. Oh. Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. I support this project. I got to tell you, I wasn't in support of it several weeks ago, if not months. Back when this first came up, when we approved the original, I believe it was $1 million after this had happened, I was... You know, I think, like most of us, we thought this was going to be a pretty cut and dry project. We were just going to repair this facility and move forward. Then we appointed the PBC to get involved in this, and I want to thank the PBC. This was a long project, and I appreciate all the work that they did on this. What they came out with the original option 7 without the lockers, I wasn't a fan of, because it reduced the size of the facility. And I was kind of happy when this project wound up going to the Board of Finance. and they added the lockers back in by recognizing the benefit of the revenue stream. And I like that. I like the fact that the town is focusing on revenue and improving those revenue streams, because that's something we're all going to benefit from in the future. Mike, to the first selectman, I liked your letter on the need for Penfield, and I think it was well-deserved. A point of fair criticism on that is that I think you offered it a little too late in the game. I would have liked to have seen that opinion come out months before. To me, the option before us is the most financially appealing to me. I like the fact that we're maximizing FEMA. It's not often we get to bring back treasure from Washington, D.C., and that's one of the things I like about this, that we're getting back what we had, and we're maximizing participation at the federal level. That's something that's important to me. It's very rare. It is on. Yeah. Jerry? Do I have permission to go to the podium, Madam Moderator?
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Do I have permission to go to the moderator,
Yes,
to
you may.
the podium? Thank you. Sorry about the interruption. To me, the option that's before us is the most financially appealing because we maximize FEMA and participation from D.C. Like I said, it's not often that we get to bring back treasure from Washington, D.C. I believe the numbers that are before us. I think after the tragedy that we suffered, to restore the facility to what it is for less than $1 million is something in what I think we owe the taxpayer. I think there's an expectation, a level of services that we have to maintain. To reduce that facility just didn't make sense to me, and that's where I stand on that. In the end, is there a right decision on this? I don't think so, and I think this is something that Mike and I had discussed several times back and forth in emails that, Mike had said a couple of times, arrive at the right decision. There is no right decision. Given everything that we have before us, I think that this is the most appealing for what I feel is a minimal cost, considering all the other costs we invest in infrastructure in this town. I'm giving back the taxpayer what they had. It's FEMA compliant, and more importantly, it's insurable. At the end, there was a very important thing. I had a tendency to get caught up in the numbers on this thing. A group that I happen to believe very strongly in, Fairfield Taxpayer, did a lot of analysis on this, and I was reading them. And I really got caught up in the numbers, and I was trying to rationalize this expense and how this was going to happen and how I could justify to my constituents how we're doing this. And I was watching the Board of Finance meeting, and, they were kicking the numbers all over the place, and, I had a great time watching. I was very informative, and thanks to them for all the work they did. And two longtime residents and, peers and people that I grew up with, John Matola and Jim Walsh, at the end, they had some comments that resonated with me and really put me over the top on this issue. And it was the intangible aspect of this thing that you really can't put a price tag on. And, like Jim Walsh had said, this is an icon to the town of Fairfield. It is. This facility has now been around and managed by the town of Fairfield for a couple of generations. It's become woven into the fabric of this community. It's everywhere. To minimize that or to deliver back to the taxpayers something less than that, I couldn't justify. And, Matola and Walsh's comments at that meeting really put me over the top because they were more eloquent in stating it than I am here tonight, because they identified that intangible, that it's part of us. It's something that we herald in this town and we're driven to and we're drawn to for good reason. It's not often that the public gets to enjoy an asset like this and something that can be used. So I look forward to that. I know there's a lot of emotion behind this issue. And, honestly, folks, it was a tough decision for me personally. I feel that I landed where I needed to be, where I think it's the best decision for my constituents, and I think it makes the best sense for us. So I'm asking all of us to support this tonight. Thank you.
Check 1, 2.
Representative Ambrose.
Good evening. It's not working.
Hello, 1, 2.
Good evening. Peter Ambrose, District 2. Thank you. Peter Ambrose, District 2. I've had the benefit of attending 3 Board of Finance meetings on this item and have listened to arguments on both sides. I really want to thank Mr. Bradley for the countless hours that he's put into this, the Building Committee, the Board of Finance for the hours they spent, and Mr. Mayor for his endeavors in moving forward with this option. I am in favor of option 7A. I think it's necessary to take into consideration several factors before voting on this. The first item is to assure ourselves as to the structural integrity of the proposed pavilion and the improvements to be made based upon the presentation by the Building Committee and Joe Michelangelo, the design and construction of the new structure. It will comply with FEMA regulations, including the V-zone elevation of 13 feet. Kevin Chamberlain, a structural civil engineer, was present at our RTM committee meetings and discussed the new enhancements to the pavilion. He is the design engineer hired to review the plans. The new facility will have a first floor elevation 3.5 feet higher than the old facility. I've also discussed the enhancements to the structure with Tom Conley of the Building Department and have been told that he feels comfortable with the design methods for the new building. Secondly, we need to assure ourselves that the cost to the taxpayers of the town of Fairfield is justifiable relative to the benefit to be realized by the public as a whole. It has been represented that the cost of the project is estimated to be between $943,000 and $1,200,000 of new money. Given that figure and weighing the benefit of rebuilding the structure, I believe it would be unwise not to approve this item. Thirdly, the resolution was approved by the Board of Finance by a 7-to-1 vote. The board spent countless hours vetting the pros and cons of 11 options and weighed in on this particular option 7A. They've weighed in and they felt that the revenue projections as represented by Jerry Lombardo, based upon parking, locker, and event fees, justify the rebuilding of this pavilion. They demonstrate and represent a positive cash flow over a period of 20 years, and I'm all in favor, as Mr. Bateson said, in favor of raising revenue in this town. It's ironic that if we do not rebuild the pavilion in a very similar manner to the pavilion that existed prior to Storm Sandy, or option number 7A, we may not satisfy the repair improvement guidelines imposed by FEMA and may not be entitled to the maximum amount of reimbursement relative to construction and mitigation costs. There have been many misunderstandings with respect to this proposal. Several RTM members may say that an overwhelming number of Fairfield residents are opposed to this option. The problem is that for the most part, the majority of the opposition has been misled to think that $6 million of new money is going to be needed to rebuild the pavilion. Based upon the reimbursement of the insurance, $1,750,000, $725,000 by way of grant funds from the state of Connecticut, and $2,609,000 from FEMA, it's estimated that the cost to the town is $973,000, or maybe $1 million. These figures also include a contingency fee of $659,000. Some people say that the Jackie Durrell Pavilion for Penfield 2 is sufficient for town use. I submit that it's not. It only has the capacity for 125 people. It barely meets ADA requirements. It's not heated, and it's difficult to access. Some people say that we should use the insurance reimbursement and not rebuild the pavilion. Well, let me ask you, if your house burned down, would you not use the insurance money to rebuild it? Just last week, Dr. Title announced the proposed educational budget for 2015-2016 to be $160.8 million for the coming year. And I understand and realize the need to fund the education for our school children. I also feel that if we can provide that amount of funding on an annual basis for 10,000 school children, can we not spend $1,200,000 for the benefit of 60,000 Fairfield residents? For generations, a benefit that can be realized for generations to come. I see the pavilion as not as a banquet hall. Rather, I see it as a meeting place. I see it as a meeting place for the Chamber of Commerce, for Rotary, for many people that don't belong to a country club. And to have a wedding there for their family, or bar mitzvahs, or bat mitzvahs. I think it'd be a wonderful venue at a penultimate place in the town of Fairfield to have a meeting place that we all can enjoy. I was a member of this RTM in 2010 when we approved lending for this particular pavilion, including the center renovation. I voted in favor of the pavilion at that time. $4.19 million of that funding is still out there. We still have to pay that back. It's not going to go away. What we are getting, however, at this time, is an enhanced pavilion with much more structural integrity. And to leave it barren or to minimize the site makes no sense to me. So I encourage you to vote in favor of this item. For me, it's not a question of what political party I belong to. It's a question of what is, I think, is in the best interest of our town citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ambrose. Representative Perugini.
Bill Perugini, District 10, appointed liaison to the Penfield Building Committee and beach area resident. First off, I'd like to recognize the entire Penfield Building Committee and Chairman Bradley for his efforts. Indeed, the town of Fairfield owes them a debt of gratitude for all their hard work over the past 14 months. I've followed the Penfield Building Committee very, very closely and sought to listen and learn before leading and representing. That included reviewing over 350 emails, soliciting opinions of residents throughout Fairfield for the last 14 months at my gym, at restaurants, at the train station, at the supermarket, and spending hours on the phone with many members of the committee. So I applaud the committee for their work. Respectfully, I do disagree with this option. It's not that I'm opposed to a pavilion, but I feel there might be other more viable options. In the work that I've done in collecting that feedback, I'm confident of a couple of things. Firstly, I'm confident that there are no few people that do not share a passionate opinion. Everyone has a very, very passionate opinion on which way they feel this building should go. I'm also confident that no matter what option is selected, not all will be happy. For me, it comes down to needs and wants. So the question is, do we need a pavilion? I don't think we need a pavilion, but it's clear to me that we want a pavilion. In spite of the district or your age or socioeconomic profile, we want a pavilion. There's no doubt in my mind. There is debate as to whether or not we want a banquet hall or meeting hall, and there's debate as to whether or not we want lockers. But from my perspective, we want a pavilion. If I look at the constituents in my district, in District 10, who I'm committed in representing, there are several needs that they have. And from the District 10 area, there's a strong need for an integrated flood mitigation plan that's endorsed by the Flood and Erosion Committee. I think that's imperative. My constituents throughout District 10 and throughout the town need a prudent expenditure of the resources required to reconstruct this facility. And lastly, I believe that we need a facility for the summer of 2016. So I guess I encourage this body to consider all of those needs in District 10 and throughout the town. Again, I applaud the Penfield Building Committee for their hard work, and I applaud the other bodies for approving this and the time they have invested in so doing. Respectfully, while I'm not opposed to a pavilion, I am opposed to this option. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Perugini. Representative Farnan.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Penfield Building Committee for all their hard work that they've put into this project. I think that what we have here is a lot of well-intended opinions, and reasonable people can definitely differ on this topic. Typically, when I think we have a debate over an expenditure, it's not whether, like education, for example, it's not typically whether or not all parties see the value in it. It's whether or not we can afford it, and that is not what we have here. From all the constituents that I've spoken to, you know, I've reached out, I've received the emails, I believe people really are informed. People just don't want this larger raised pavilion. None of my constituents, the vast majority of my constituents, do not want it. This is also not an issue of, you know, the taxpayer fixed income groups versus the younger generation or school-aged children who want to spend more money. This is just, you know, what type of asset do we want down on the beach? And the collective response that I've received is, we want a pavilion, yes, we want a pavilion that we all can enjoy, but we don't want a pavilion of that size. You know, the real beauty of the beach is the beach. If you look at the Penfield Pavilion now, which is obviously in a little bit of disrepair, it is aesthetically challenged from the road, and now we're going to raise that. And I really think we're doing a harm to the whole area by just making this something. I don't think we're listening to the voters and the people that we represent, because I do believe that the vast majority of the opinion has been yes pavilion, but something smaller. Additionally, the numbers, I just don't believe, they don't work. I think there's some government fuzzy math here. If you know, putting aside even the FEMA guaranteed money and whether or not that's guaranteed, whether that's going to result, you know, there's also a possibility of cost overruns. You also have to look at the higher repair costs. For example, with the locker space, you know, over $1 million to spend on a locker room, which I have not heard any outcry for those lockers, I think is a mistake. If you look at, you know, the Excel spreadsheets on that, you know, costs for operations, electricity, supposedly the lockers do not create any additional increase on that, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. And a 20 to 30 year payback just doesn't seem right, especially when you're dealing with, I think, some questionable calculations. You know, for example, a 2% utility increase. You just look at the utility rate increases that just occurred this year. 2% utility increases are not realistic. They're going to be much higher. So at the end of the day, I think what people are asking us is, you know, we could save money, for example, by not doing something like the lockers, and we could do flood protection. And I do believe that people are informed. I don't believe anyone has been misled on this topic, and I believe that the vast majority of members of the public do not want a pavilion of this size and nature. Let the beauty of the beach stand for what it is. Thank you.
Please, absolutely no applause from the audience. Thank you. Is there any, Representative McKenzie?
I'll be brief because I'm repeating some of the things that were said, but some other things I wanted to cover. First of all, I agree. Everybody wants a pavilion of some type, almost. A couple of people want just the beach, but most people want a pavilion. I have 4 reasons why I think we should vote no on 7A. The first is the input that I've been getting in emails, and I think everybody here is getting the same thing, 2 to 1 say make it a smaller pavilion. You just have to go back and look at those, put them in 2 different stacks and count them up. They want a pavilion, but they want a smaller pavilion. And by the way, that smaller pavilion can look a lot nicer on the beach. If you look at a rendering that was done by the architects, it's a very good-looking, complementary building with the beach. So that's reason number one, input that I've been getting. Number two is we already have a banquet hall. We don't need another one. As a matter of fact, if we get to the point where we have 2 banquet halls operating in the non-winter months, 7 months out of the year, we'll have 300 events going on in those months, or 10 events a week. So you can imagine what that does to the people in that area in terms of noise, in terms of traffic, in terms of safety hazards. 10 a week. Is this what we think is going to be appealing to people who are prospective buyers coming into the area? The numbers, I don't think support it. If we've had different numbers come in. This is why the Board of Selectmen had to go through it at least twice before voting. The Board of Finance had to go through it about 3 times. And numbers have moved right along. As a matter of fact, when we had committee meetings on January 20th or 21st, we got new numbers. So these are not projections that have sat still. These have been moving because there's a lot of guesswork going on. This will cost, 7A will cost $2.7 million, not the 0.9 we're talking about, because you shouldn't include the insurance. The insurance is a sunk cost. Using the example that was given, if you had a heavily mortgaged house that was wiped out by a flood and you got insurance, wouldn't you apply it to the house? You'd first apply it to that big mortgage you hadn't paid, and then you'd figure out what do you have to borrow to get back on your feet. In our case, it's $2.7 million. If FEMA doesn't come through the way we're hoping, it's going to be $3.3 million, and that's taxpayer dollars. Could you use that money elsewhere? Well, one of the things under consideration is $1.7 million for school security for kids. We have plenty of things like that where I think the money can be better used. Finally, the net cash flow, because everybody has said, well, you know, this is a money maker. We got to go into this. If you look at some of the numbers here, the projections really don't reflect what it costs to run the Jackie Durrell Pavilion being transferred over to the new pavilion. And then if you include the extra cost for having the banquet hall, the cash flow, I think, could wind up being, at best, break even. So it's not a reason to pay down debt. It's a reason to have a lot more commotion that we wouldn't need. So I encourage you not to rubber stamp what's gone on before and to vote tonight no on option 7A. Thank you.
Representative Jacob and then Representative Schwartz.
Hi, Ellen Jacob, District 9. This Penfield decision is a lot like Goldilocks tasting the bowls of porridge, trying to find one that's just right. And it's a hard job, and a job that so many people have worked for so long to resolve. So I really feel a little of all the arguments right here. But the right Penfield solution is not all about money. That's too cold. Most of us want a structure, a pavilion that our town can be proud of and continue to enjoy. Nor is it purely about recapturing the past, though I understand the feeling of loss and the need to fill it as soon as possible. But the feelings on all sides run hot, too hot. Tonight we have only one bowl of porridge before us, only one option. And the question is, should we swallow it, or should we run from the footsteps of the returning bears, the bears of funding risk and more debt, of unpredictable weather, and of public opposition. If we separate facts from assumptions and actuals from projections, the answer may become more clear. Funding risk is a big concern of mine, and I do believe that some of the assumptions about what we will actually realize at the end of this long road in the way of FEMA reimbursements may be over-optimistic. Although we're being asked to approve up to $4,279,709 in bonding appropriations for Penfield, we're told to expect up to 75% will be reimbursed by FEMA. The facts. Per Joe Michelangelo at Public Works, to date we only have $200,000 of payments out of over $16.5 million in Sandy relief big project funding that's been paid to our account. The $200,000 was for 5 projects totaling $4,854,000, a little more than that, which have reached the closeout and final audit stage. And as Joe said, Fairfield is required to first pay their costs before any reimbursement can take place. FEMA final reimbursement amount cannot be assured until FEMA completes several reviews of cost documentations. These reviews are conducted by state PA representatives and multiple FEMA representatives in Hartford, FEMA Region 1 in Massachusetts, and finally at FEMA headquarters in Washington. Meanwhile, Fairfield must incur more debt before repayment, which could be years later. Fact, current federal deficit is $564 billion, and the debt is $19 trillion and growing. Connecticut state deficit is $121 million, with a predicted $1.3 billion revenue shortfall for 2015-16 due to eroding tax receipts, department cost overruns, and Obamacare mandates. Governor Malloy has made 2 rounds of cuts and is expected to make more soon. What are the odds we'll get?
Connecticut standpoints relevant to the discussion before us?
Yeah, because I'm just about to say why.
I will allow it. I just want to remind everybody you have 10 minutes on a debate item.
Okay,
so
this won't be 10 minutes, promise. But now I've lost my place and it may take me 10 minutes to find it. Okay, oh dear me. Okay, it really goes to the question of what are the odds that we will get that 75% max reimbursement from FEMA. The picture, if you look at it, it comes from Washington through the state, through many reviews and audits, and it takes a lot of time, and we don't know what we're really going to get back. We have some debt assumptions here. The bill for option 7A will be $6,028,709 less the insurance money already secured, plus the FEMA reimbursements to take away from that. So the net cost assumption is it's about $944,000 bill to the town. Not much when you consider what we could be getting in return. But the actual cost to our town has to be looked at in an entire debt picture. And from the fiscal 2014 report, the annual debt service cost, that's principal plus interest, that we were paying to carry $218,061,000 of debt is very hard to pin down. At the very last figure we got from Bob Mayer was $25,620,000 that we paid for debt service. So adding anything to our debt, which we must do to fulfill our obligations to the school system, to the town, to our capital projects, is going to add to this. And if that's not bad enough, we have a whole bunch of school capital projects, town capital projects, we have union negotiations, it goes on and on. And we did have another note in the 2014 fiscal report that tax delinquency seems to be outpacing anything we could hope to increase in our tax base. Uncollected taxes doubled from only $683,000 in 2012 to $1,278,000 in 2013, and grew over 2.5 times from that year to 2014 to reach $3,295,000 in uncollected taxes. Okay, okay, we'll wrap up. Okay. There are also common sense measures that really aren't here yet. There's a lot of public opposition that we've gotten. We've all read the same emails. Each of our districts have received requests from our own constituents. There are other options. I think we need to think about this a little more. And just remember how Goldilocks and the Three Bears ended. Goldilocks hot-footed it out of the house just in time to escape. We can have a beautiful building to be proud of. We can protect it better from future storm damage, preserve the Penfield neighborhood, and save taxpayer money. I urge you to vote no and send it back for a better look. Option 9 is not a better look. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to limit debate on this issue, and I want everyone to be heard, but while rules allow for you to have 10 minutes worth of debate, I will be honest with you, you start to lose your audience if you can't get your point across rather quickly. So I'm not looking to cut anybody off, but if you could kind of keep that in the back of your head, I think that would be productive for the full body. Representative Schwartz.
Hal Schwartz, District 7. I'm in a kind of an odd situation here. I'm going to stand up here and say that I do agree with Mr. Bateson. I do think this is a good idea. I've also been here as long as Representative Ambrose has, but he and I were on the opposite sides of the fences. Because 7 years ago, I voted no for Penfield because I didn't think that this was something that the town needed and the town wanted to invest in. But 7 years ago, I lost that battle. Then the West Wing came up. The second set of bonding resolutions came before the body. And since we had already had money in it originally, my thought was, and I was told by the constituents, the people that put me here, that we needed to finish the project. That project was finished. I voted yes again. The project is now back before us. People will, and as you just heard, there's a lot of assumptions here, yes. But the city of New Orleans, they made an assumption too, and they got their reimbursement back on what happened down there. And that city is, again, thriving, and that's thanks to FEMA. The Board of Finance has looked this over time and time again. The Board of Finance are the people that the constituents of this town elect to look at the finance, not this body. This body is a legislative body. We're supposed to legislate. If you want to talk about money and dollars and who's getting what, run for the Board of Finance. That's not our job. The Board of Finance voted. They didn't like what they saw originally. They sent it back. We got back a project that says, when all said and done, based on the information, the best information that is available to us by the best people in the town, that for $900,000 to $1.2 million, we can generate revenue. Okay, there is $3.9 million of bonding money that's already out there. We have to pay that money regardless of whether we build this or not. We need to build this. We need to at least generate some kind of revenue to pay down the debt that's already there. I think everybody in this room should support this. It's been going on long enough. We need to get the project going. Please support this. Thank you.
Representative Caffarelli.
And I will be brief, too. I will be very brief. And I do think it boils down to It's timing and leadership. The overwhelming concern that I've heard from my constituents have been, what has taken so long? What's been going on? And so we need to get this done. You know, the analysis of this, I believe, from what I've heard from several different people, is that you can take $800,000, demolish it, and have a sand dune, or you can put $950,000 in and actually rebuild the facility. And I think that that's what they want to do. The revenue stream, that's an issue. I think that it's a good thing to have. You know, I respectfully disagree with you, but, you know, people have been telling me that that's a good thing to have the banquet facility. I sit on the FBRA, which is the Fairfield Beach Residents Association. I've talked to them, the president, Paige, as you know. She wants this to happen too. And everybody wants to go forward. Timing is the real issue. They are just so frustrated with the fact that there's been such inaction with this administration in not doing anything and not getting it done. And so 7A, if we kick 7A back, how long is it going to take to actually finally get something back to our body to make a decision? And so if we, you know, it's 8 to 12 months out from here. If we vote on it today, it's going to be another year out, at least. And nobody wants to drive by that beach and look at that metal gate around Penfield Beach any longer. And they're just sick and tired of it. And so am I. And, you know, our family bought our beach house 25 years ago, and they're just very, very frustrated with it. So I am in favor of it because of that. Is it the best option? No, but I think we need to go forward with it.
Thank you, Representative Caffarelli. Representative Braun.
Kathy Braun, District 8. I'm primarily going to read a letter from a constituent. Her name is Alyssa Israel, and she raises issues that are close to my heart because they have to do with environmental issues. I won't read her whole letter, but she said, I'm a lifetime resident of Fairfield and an 18-year resident of the beach area. I would love to save Penfield 1, however, I feel this is very imprudent for the following reasons. 1, it's only a matter of time before a Category 1, 2, 3, or 4 hurricane with major winds and a more massive storm surge than Sandy would ruin the building again. Sandy was only a post-tropical cyclone by the time it reached Fairfield Beach. We were lucky the storm surge was only 10 feet high. It would have been much higher if this relatively mild cyclone had reached its peak on a higher tide cycle. I learned this from Joe Michelangelo in his presentation to the Board of Selectmen on January 8th. And you can find this on fairtv.pegcentral.com for that date. Number 2, Penfield 1 is only an estimated 75 feet from the high tide line. She measured it. That was really close. The beach is eroding. It needs constant replenishment by the town. Based on the current state and federal policy and practice and lack of suitable sand material, it is unlikely that large artificial beach fills will be a viable alternative for long-term planning and pavilion shore protection in the future. That is from a report by former Conservation Director Tom Stanke on March 26, 2014 to the Penfield Building Committee. Number 3. Sea levels are rising, and more so in the Northeast compared to the global average. And, quote, the frequency and extent of severe coastal storms are expected to increase, and large surge levels may cause significant damage to coastal infrastructure and alteration of ecosystems. And that's on www.edc.uri.edu. 4, finally, Penfield 1 is very wide, nearly 300 feet wide and sprawling. A lot of surface area exposed to wave, surge, wind, and rain for a massive hurricane. Alyssa spoke to an official who works closely with FEMA, and they confirmed that we want less exposure to hurricanes. A smaller building means less to get damaged. Alyssa believes, and she, just so you know, she's also the founder of the Bike Walk Coalition. She does a lot for the town. Keep the ADA ramp, keep the first aid, lifeguard, men's and women's rooms only. The West Wing area is 64 by 60 feet. It was protected from Sandy's scouring damage. She believes because of a very stable berm secured by scrub pines behind it, and she doesn't believe this would need to be elevated, and recommend just leaving it in place at the current height, which is good for ADA accessibility. Salvage materials from the rest, and build a larger gathering room behind the Bird Homestead that can be used for rental income as a gathering area. She believes that while that's not on the table before us, there are safer, more practical alternatives. Thank you.
Representative Gottlieb. Is that working now?
I don't want to rely on it for public comment.
Okay. At the podium, please.
Thank you. Julie Gottlieb, District 6. I would also like to thank the PBC and the First Selectman and the number of people that have worked so hard to push this through. Yes, there have been significant delays, but I think there's been a lot of paddling under the surface to move us to this point. I actually had this great checklist that I was going to go through for the reasons that I was supporting this, and Representative Bateson and Representative Ambrose pretty much took care of every box on that, so thank you for that. Thanks. Love when somebody else does my work. One of the things I did want to bring up was I heard the expression fuzzy math. This is not fuzzy math, and I would venture to say that the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen and those of us sitting in this room would be a little insulted to think that we're making our decisions on fuzzy math. I think there's also been a lot of incorrect information that has been circulated by special interest groups, which has clouded the issue. The risk of the other reason I wanted to support this was that we run a risk of not qualifying for FEMA or not qualifying for as much if they decide that this is an alternative, not a repair and replace, which is why 7A was, in my mind, a better option, because it gave us the greatest assurance that FEMA would accept it, because it's just an elevation change. So I think that's an important point to remember. And I will say it again, although it has been said, that $3.9 million has already been bonded on this. We have spent this, and the only way to start generating revenue is to do this. We're moving into budget season. We've already begun, and we are going to start hearing people on both sides of the aisle talk about ways to generate revenue, and I think this does that. And I will finish by saying I too have received emails from constituents and stopped in grocery stores and libraries and all the other places that we all spend time in, and I have heard overwhelmingly in favor of replacing what we had. People want to go back to the beach, they want the lockers, they want the pavilions. I've had people say to me, that had better be open when my kid's ready for his graduation. And so I will be supporting this on behalf of those people. Thank you.
Does anyone from the body have anything new they wish to add to the debate? Anything new that you wish to add to the debate? Representative O'Brien and then Representative Timniak.
Good evening, Lauren O'Brien, District 5. I would also like to start by thanking the Penfield Building Committee. Your charge was daunting, and you've worked long and hard. It's kind of a thankless task, I think, but you've really put your heart and soul into it, and I appreciate it. Because this is such an incredibly polarizing project, people are passionate, as Representative Perugini said. Most agree they want something, but that's where the agreement seems to stop. One thing is true, they're passionate. I've been conflicted how to vote, I have to be honest with you. I reached out to my constituents. I'm new, this is my second year on the RTM, so I called people, I talked to people everywhere I went except the gym, I don't belong, and, and I emailed them. I also have concerns about future environmental issues. First off, noise and traffic are not a reason to vote no. They are things that need to be addressed. We need quality of life, we want a nice town, but they're not a reason to vote no. If you live near a municipal property where people drive past your house, and maybe that traffic is going to increase with parties and a banquet hall, that's okay. If they park in your driveway or across your driveway, that's not okay. But more traffic, that's not a reason to vote no. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of people I talk to, and from what I hear tonight, brace yourself. We have 5 beaches. And there's a pavilion an eighth of a mile away, if it's even that far. It's called Jennings Beach. We are not without a pavilion. No one is going to suffer this summer if we don't have Penfield open. We have a pavilion. I think we need to be fiscally responsible. I'm concerned, very concerned, that we're writing checks that we can't cash. You know, we'll get there. I know we'll get there, but I was very disappointed when fellow RTM reps over the past year, more recently within weeks, stated, I don't know what to do, but we got to do something. Let's just vote it and get it over with. It's a lot of money. It's too much money to take that kind of attitude, because the taxpayers of this town are going to have to absorb the cost. The cost is not fixed. They are projections, and projections are just that. They are an estimate. We don't know what the FEMA reimbursement will be. We are optimistic, but it will be up to 75%. That's not a guarantee. Up to. You know, we're not guaranteed of that. We're not guaranteed lumber won't go up and the price of steel won't go up. None of these things are guaranteed. They're projections. They're estimates. So that's a concern. For the RTM votes that I have to cast, I seek the opinion and value the opinions of all the voters in town, but I really focus on my district. That's all I can do, because that's what I was elected to do, to represent the people in my district. An overwhelming majority expressed that they either didn't want it rebuilt at an additional cost or they wanted something smaller. I did get 2 emails tonight. I've been checking that wanted it built as is. But the overwhelming majority of the communication that I got and the conversations I've had is that people don't want a huge pavilion. You know, this process and the procedure, it's been protracted and delayed. At times it seemed convoluted. The project is so complicated that industry professionals either disagreed or appeared lost at times. And there was an email that you all got. I don't know, I'm not sure, it's the best guess at this time, it's only an estimate, we won't know till later. That was all part of the process, and up till quite recently. It's concerning. This is a lot of money and it's a big decision for our town. I asked when the monies would be awarded, the FEMA monies, when we would be guaranteed what those monies would be. We won't know until after it's built. You know, when you're in Ireland and you ask directions, if you ask 4 people, you're guaranteed to get at least 4 options. They'll all be different, and each person is convinced that theirs is the best way to go. And one person will tell you, you can't get there from here. I know we can get there, I'm confident, but I cannot in good faith and support option 7A, and I'll tell you why. I voted against the education budget because I am fiscally conservative. First time I've ever been called conservative in my life, but I'm fiscally conservative. It would be hypocritical of me to vote to spend this money for Penfield and then turn around and take it away from education. It's wrong. We have a lot of things to pay for. I won't be supporting this. Thank you. But I do think, I'm sorry, you're edging on.
I'm sorry.
You're encroaching. You're encroaching.
I asked for new comments.
I want to see a pavilion, but I don't want to see us rush to a vote. I don't think it's going to be done 2016. I don't think it's going to be done quickly, but we're so close. Now everybody in this room that was elected as an RTM rep, you're so much more up to speed than you were, but there's still questions. Whether we vote on it this month or whether we vote on it next month, I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference, but I think it would help be a better vetted situation and have us come to a more fiscally responsible decision.
Thank you. Representative Timniak. And again, we've had a lot of debate. I want you to please think about your comments when you come up, and I'm looking for new arguments on this. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank the Penfield Building Committee first and foremost. They did a great job At the end of the day, they hosted over 20 meetings, and they solicited input from everybody who made themselves available. So I thank you, Jim, for your hard work on that. I want to start off by saying when I was a kid, I grew up on Fern Street, and I attended Sherman Elementary School. I used to walk with my parents down to Penfield Pavilion, like many families in the beach area do. So I come from a standpoint of being a beach resident, growing up, utilizing the old Penfield Pavilion as it was intended to use. Today, I stand here and I'm sort of perplexed at what's going on here. On one hand, we had a Penfield Building Committee come out. They did the meetings. They solicited their input. And we're proposing the same building which is there right now, the exact same building. At the end of the day, we're changing the FEMA standards to the new footage. My concern is that the first selectman put out an article last week, an op-ed piece, that basically said we need a Penfield Pavilion. We could have done that last year, or we could have put out that last year. We could have avoided the process, which essentially split the town, in my view. We received hundreds of emails, I find, which were almost unnecessary if we made the decision early on that we were just going to rebuild the same building we had. It's not hard. Many other communities who were faced with the same situation we were here in Fairfield, where one of our major assets was taken down. And I look at it from the standpoint of we sort of dithered on the issue. We didn't have strong leadership to come out and say, I want this rebuilt, and I want this rebuilt as quickly as possible. So instead, we have to subject ourselves to RTM redebating an issue which we hashed out 5 years ago. We have to put ourselves in a position where we're asking volunteers to subject themselves to 20-plus meetings. We have a situation where we received, if not thousands of emails, I would say hundreds of emails, probably a little over 1,000 emails. Many of the emails came passionately written. Residents spent long time writing these emails. They were well thought out and well drafted. I believe we could have avoided all that. Today we end up, and I think we're sort of in the exact same spot, of just having the same building at the FEMA standards. I also read Alyssa Israel's letter, and I agree with most of it. Yeah, okay. The big, so I don't need to rehash Alyssa's email, but I do want to say, the vast majority of the people who emailed me asked for a smaller building. They asked for a smaller building. They went, they testified, they sent us emails, they asked for a smaller building. And tonight, before us, we're actually saying, you know what, we're giving you a bigger building. We're adding square footage. We're making it taller. So the people who drive by and say, gosh, that's huge, we can't deal with it, we're actually making it bigger. So we're taking all of those people's comments and all of their concerns, and we're basically saying, hey, thanks for going through our process. And I don't want to call it a mock process, or I certainly don't want to do that, but I want to say that we are not passionately evaluating their desires, their wants. Instead, I understand what we're doing. I understand rebuilding the facility. At the end of the day, this is a beach community, and we need to have a pavilion there. I just feel we should give the voice to the people who advocated for a smaller facility, and we should have a smaller facility there. The large facility, which so many people have been upset about, or so many people have commented on, sits before us tonight for a vote. I understand why both sides of people want this. I also understand why people want this to be done and be over with. But tonight I'll be voting no, essentially to give the voice to the people who came to all the meetings to ask for a smaller facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tunek. Representative Walk, then Representative McCarthy, Palmer, Sundman, and Mayor.
Jay Walk, District 6. This is what makes our country so great. Differences of opinions. Everybody has a difference of opinions. We don't take the people who don't want the pavilion, who don't want it big or small, lightly. I take everybody's concerns to heart. So I say, if the Empire State Building gets destroyed in Manhattan, do we rebuild it? Do they rebuild it? The Penfield Pavilion is Fairfield. How could we not rebuild this? We make it bigger, we make it better for a reason. We're going to have storms. It's not going to stop. We're not going to leave $4.9 million on the table and call it a day. We need to move on. We need to build this building back up. And that's my opinion. So thank you.
Representative McCarthy.
Tom McCarthy, District 8. Two quick points I'd just like to make. There's been some remarks about fuzzy math and so forth. I don't believe that's true, but I think the Board of Finance went in with their eyes open, that there are a number of variables here. And if you look at option 7A and compare it to, as what we know is option 9, substantially the difference is banquet hall or not. I think we're all in agreement that we want to rebuild the pavilion, but the scope of that is something about people may differ. Now, I said a month ago, I don't want to walk away from something that will generate revenue. And I'd hope that 7A would be more compelling. There are a number of assumptions in there which are at best bandwidths. And we know both from a revenue side and both from a standpoint of what FEMA reimbursement may or may not be. I think the Board of Finance went in with their eyes open on that. They understood, and then perhaps it went back to them 3 times. These are not hard and fast numbers, so we need not kid ourselves. If we look at comparing one option against another, I thought one would be a home run and this would be easy. But potentially they could be jump balls, depending upon what your assumptions are in terms of revenue over the course of the next 20 years. And in point of fact, we'd have to generate $200,000 worth of revenue each and every year. That facility would have to be used every other day, which may or may not happen, but it doesn't jive with the run rate for the preceding 12 months. So if you look at the math, again, I think collectively we did as best as we can, but let's understand that this may or may not come. The numbers are tough. It's not a compelling case. I'm probably going to support it just because they are close enough. And that's all I'll say, but I will differ from Representative Schwartz to the degree that simply because the Board of Finance approves something, that we on the RTM should abdicate our responsibility to drill down those numbers and analyze them for ourselves. And I will disagree with Representative Periguini to the extent that concessions could be a want, but restrooms, I think, from time to time are a need. Thank you.
The difference between an Irishman and an Italian. Representative Sundman.
Hi, Eric Sundman, RTM District 1. I just wanted to say that, well, I first want to say thank you very much to Mr. Bradley and his committee for all the time and work they've done. I originally wanted to support this item in committee, and I've decided I've got to change my mind because there's some issues that I just can't get over that for option 7A, and they're pretty major, and I do believe that I feel more comfortable seeing elevation increase. I'd like to see better flood mitigation for that immediate area, and I'm a little skeptical on the real FEMA reimbursement. Like I'm really not sure 100% that we're going to get that. I don't know. Most of the emails that I've received in my district, people want a smaller pavilion. And pretty much that's what I've been hearing here tonight. So I've changed my mind, and again, I thank everybody who's been working on this.
Thank you. Representative Mayor? Okay. Representative Meyer, I'm sorry. Representative Palmer.
Joe Palmer, District 4. This project has become kind of a source of, or symbol of frustration in the community, I think. Partly based on maybe over the past few decades, other projects that have, let's say, gone over budget or were mismanaged in one way or another. So I completely understand why many in the community have little faith that we can get this job done correctly and restore Penfield back to its recent form, but also restore it in a way that we won't have this problem again. It's also a lesson for town officials that wasteful spending in the past can really handcuff us in the future and place limitations on us. But as Mr. Ambrose said, we still owe about roughly between $2.5 and $3 million on the old structure. And I think option 7A is the best possible way for us to recoup that money. But I also would really like to have this kind of facility in the community. I think we have limited options for any entertainment on the beach, being a coastal community. But and I would also love my daughter to have her wedding reception there. However, I do not believe the assumptions, like Mr. McCarthy said, I do not believe the assumptions that were brought forward by the Parks and Rec Department. With all due respect, I don't think the math will work that way. I think we have to figure out a way to increase our fees to pass along the cost of the expense of this new project to the people who are going to be using it the most. And that's in, raising fees. I think we're charging $1,000 for a rental of the banquet. I think that could easily be readjusted, especially for out-of-towners. So I'll be lobbying the Parks and Rec Commission to have those fees increased. So I'm also disappointed that the process didn't include any ideas for alternative sources of funding. We have some great learning experiences from the Fairfield Theater Company, and as the first selectman said, with the Fairfield Museum, but with some of the other ventures that we've had more recently. The tennis center, thank you. So I think that we should be exploring some of those opportunities still to figure out how to offset the cost and reduce that expense that the taxpayers are going to be absorbing. I'd also like to see an effort in the community to help taxpayers to offset the cost for taxpayers by raising money through donations. Again, especially from those who are going to be using the facility the most. But I'd, of course, be happy to see any corporations in town also chip in. And I think many would be thrilled to have their names immortalized in bricks, planks, benches, chairs. And I particularly like the sound of Bigelow Tea Pavilion. I think that would be a great name. But seriously, I think we need to have an outreach in the community to help raise money, to help offset the expense here. And I'll be the first to help out, and you can call me up and I'll write you a check if that process gets underway. So I do support Plan A, but all involved need to understand that all eyes are on you, and there's no room for error in this project. This needs to get done the right way, and it needs to be done in a way that's built to last. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We've been debating this for almost an hour, I think, before. I think it's only fair to let the public speak. We'll be coming back to the body, but I think with the hour and the way this is going, that we might want to allow the public to speak, and so we can hear them and then come back to the body.
I agree with you. However, I have two representatives who have already indicated they want to speak. Representative Perugini, if you wouldn't mind waiting until after public comment, since it's your second time. I have Representative Garskoff and then Representative Hurley, and then we will go to the public.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. I'll be very brief. I've heard a few questions or comments from our body questioning the FEMA reimbursement, and frankly, I didn't hear any question about that from presentations from the administration. It sounded pretty cut and dried. Now, there may be certain elements that don't qualify for reimbursement in the end, so there may be some slight variance, but if it's okay, through you, Madam Moderator, I'd like to ask Mr. Michelangelo to answer the question about FEMA reimbursements, if you don't mind, and how that works, and whether there's a risk that we would not receive, roughly the amount of reimbursements that are anticipated.
Mr. Michelangelo?
Thank you.
Good evening. At both the RTM meetings and at one of the subcommittee meetings, there was that question posed about the risk of the reimbursement. And the reimbursement is 75%. So 75% of the cost is the reimbursement. The rub is what is the eligible cost. And one of the things we presented was try to get a risk profile of what the risk would be. So above the first floor elevation, everything you see is pretty much certainty, and we think we pegged that about 95%, because there's really not much you could argue about on the first floor elevation. As you get below, the foundation does change. We're going from spread footings to a pile footing, so there our risk is a little more, but we tried to identify items both ourselves in consultation with Shawma, our construction manager, with Whit O'Brien, our FEMA consultants, to try to peg a number. And then the most risky, so to speak, is the stuff like the around the grounds. So in that numbers, which was part of Bob Mayer's presentation, that blended rate over there is about 85%, which we think is a conservative number of what we would receive as far as eligible. Once again, that's conservative. And going back into all our FEMA projects thus far to now, just about every one of them we've received 85% or above. So that's how we tried to quantify the risk profile on our FEMA reimbursement, and we're confident on that number.
Thank you, sir. And do I recall also that we received a grant that you're going to use to offset some of the more risky FEMA reimbursement, meaning risk that would not be reimbursed, the more risky parts of the project?
Correct, and that's the most recent community development block grant, disaster relief grant that we received for actually $300,000, which $225 is reimbursable. So that's the same 75% as FEMA pays. And one of the questions that we got, well, we're really not getting much more than FEMA gave us, but in a sense, yeah, we're securing the most risky part of it. So it is beneficial in the overall the projections.
Thank you. So basically, you're not concerned of whether we're going to get reimbursement or that it will be pretty close to the projections. It's just that maybe some variance here or there.
Correct, and invariable there will be items that will be discussed that we will haggle with, but we're pretty confident that that our eligible cost profile is pretty reasonable as we projected.
Thank you.
Representative Hurley, and then we'll go to the public.
Thank you. Michael Hurley, RTM District 1. I'll be brief here, just really 3 points that I have. I do support Penfield. From an investment standpoint, we're getting a $6 million rebuild of a town asset that will last generations, and it's costing us $1 million. That's an investment that I would make every time. We had some discussions about the insurance policy. I think when you're talking about an insurance policy on a public asset, it's designed to protect the people's asset in the event of a disaster. And I think about it similarly to if you're married and you lose your wedding ring and you have an insurance policy on it and you make a claim and you go out and you purchase a new wedding ring. You don't go to your spouse and say, well, I lost the wedding ring. I don't think I want to be married anymore. Beyond that, I think that's the first time I ever got applause in this body. Beyond that, back in November of 2013, I believe, this body unanimously approved all of the members on the Penfield Building Committee. We did that because we had faith in their judgment. We were impressed by their credentials. They held many, many meetings. When I think about the roles and responsibilities of the RTM, Hal Schwartz was talking about that we're a legislative body. Plain and simple, to me, I view us as, you know, the financial backstop of the town. I mean, we're not building managers. I think we need to have some faith in the process, in the administration. The Board of Selectmen approved it unanimously. The Board of Finance approved it, I believe, 6-1. Again, I think it's a prudent investment. We're talking about getting a $6 million asset, and it's only going to cost us approximately $1 million. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go to the public at this time. If I could have everybody line up who would like to speak, I will allow 2 minutes of public comment from each person. We will stop. There'll be a timer right here. When you see the pink sheet that says time, please stop. I will ask that you get in line. When I see the last person in line, that will be the last person to speak. So now's your chance. Don't stay seated. Is it working?
Is it live now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the body during public comment? This will be your last opportunity to get in line. All right. Mr. Convertito, are you in line? Okay, so the last speaker on this item will be Mr. Convertito. Mr. Bass. Well, any last call for speakers for public comment? All right, thank you. Mr. Bass will be the last speaker. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Ken Camaro. I live at 345 Carroll Road by Fairfield U. I first want to begin with this right from the town website. It's a list of all the recreation facilities in Fairfield. It's beaches, it's tennis courts, it's the pavilions, it's the golf courses, it's the marinas. What's important about this big list is that the Penfield Pavilion is one of the dozens of recreation sites and properties, each one used by a minority of the town's 22,000 households and 60,000 population. Every family uses these facilities in different ways at different periods in the family cycle. That's the way it is. I use the pavilion. My wife likes to get in the veranda out of the sun because she's Irish and has a fair complexion. My twin grandsons like to go down on the beach and play in the sandbar. This portfolio of recreation properties helps the town have a very high quality of life. Penfield Pavilion, I want to talk about 6 words now, and I'll try to keep this within 2 minutes. Portfolio, thread, legacy, footprint, fair to fair, pros and cons, and so forth. We got this property in 1978. there was a footprint, there was a structure, and every successive committee and group that's been involved with this, there has been a thread, and the thread is that this is a legacy, and we're going to pass it from one generation to the next. The next item is footprint. One of the things that has not been mentioned, if anybody is familiar with the beach properties, okay, that whole mile and a half,
Sarah,
the
that's
billion
time.
dollar.
Thank you. You're welcome to submit anything you have in writing to the clerk.
May I just finish one last sentence, okay?
One last
Footprint
sentence,
is very important. Every property owner on that beach jealously guards that footprint because of all the conservation regulations, and you just have to preserve it. Believe me, you have to preserve
Thank you
that.
very much for your comments.
Okay, my name is Kathy Niznansky. I want to talk really quickly because of the 2 minutes. But seriously, I live on Penfield Road. I just retired from teaching after 33 years. Penfield has been a problem. The pavilion, long before Sandy, it was a problem with Irene too. We had flooding in the area. You can't be sure of how much FEMA is going. I can tell you because I've dealt with FEMA through 2 storms. You can't be sure what they're going to pay for even after you finish it. Thirdly, why don't you preserve the beauty of that coastline and let everybody in the town see the beauty of the beach rather than this big ugly building? And lastly, as a teacher, the fact I was worried teaching sometimes the last few years because of Newtown and everything. And the fact that you would put money towards this pavilion and cut money towards our security and our children is disgraceful.
John Levinson, 883 Harbor Road. We've worked hard on the Fairfield Taxpayer Penfield Survey, and I, of anyone, is closest to the mechanics of the survey. I repeat my invitation to everyone in this room that if they'd like more details of the results, I'm happy to share them. We set out to find out what people of Fairfield really wanted. We got 1,417 respondents who clearly spoke, with 74% saying they did not want a large pavilion with banquet hall. The vast majority want a pavilion, but a smaller one. Every neighborhood in town is against 7A, with over 80% of being seen by 3 districts. That's 4-1 against, and the smallest margin at 64%, still about 2-1 against 7A. I've shared the data with you in last week's email. I want to point out a couple things and add something at the end. I'm not familiar with a larger survey of Fairfield citizens in recent years. 1,400 people is a lot of people across the entire town, as I showed before. The data demonstrates consistency across all neighborhoods and voting districts. Half the respondents to the survey came to the survey from Facebook, word of mouth, or the Minuteman ads that we placed. These were not people known to Fairfield Taxpayer or necessarily familiar with Fairfield Taxpayer, that half of the group. Fairfield Taxpayer shared on our site and in an email to you 100 pages of comments. And even anyone glancing at these comments will conclude the people of Fairfield don't want a large pavilion with a banquet hall. Some relate to dollars and cents. Many of them do not. They relate to a broader aspect of what they think they'd like to see at the beach. So even if you don't like the wording of some of the questions, and we can debate the wording of questions forever, you cannot ignore these comments, which were general comments that people made, and again, there are 100 pages of them here. I encourage you all in this room
Thank you,
to
Mr.
find out what the
Levinson.
people of Fairfield want, and then give the citizens of Fairfield what we want. Thank you.
Matt Hutzelman, 317 Pansy Road. My biggest worry is just like, if this doesn't pass, then what? To put the truck in reverse is just going to be unbelievable. I mean, you're just talking another year, it's been another 2 years. I mean, just get it done. I mean, maybe this isn't the best, but you know that if this doesn't pass, it's just going to be just endless list. I mean, just endless more hearings and studies and all that stuff. Just, this is the one that's got to pass, or else it's not going to pass for another, 3 years. And, I mean, I understand. I have no doubt that your emails have probably been going against this. I would think, in general, most people in town are for having a rebuilt pavilion as it is. I think what would happen is if something didn't happen, it didn't get rebuilt, people would go to the beach and just be like, what just happened to our pavilion? We abandoned ship, essentially. We had a pavilion that was beautiful, and I'll probably never use the banquet hall personally, but we had a beautiful pavilion, and now it's gone, or now it's just reduced. I think people, if that day ever comes and they finally wake up to that, I think most people in town would be really disappointed with the outcome of that. And I think just pass this one. Don't wait. Let's not have another year or 2 or 3 or whatever. Just pass this one. Thank you.
My name is Jen Agney. I live on 263 North Pine Creek, and I'm here on the behalf of over a dozen families who could not make it because, unfortunately, us moms have to find babysitters. So it got canceled so many times. I was sent. I just wanted to speak on behalf of many families and friends of ours who say we are against option 7A. Bigger is not always better. Option 9, a smaller pavilion that we currently have, which has no lockers or banquet hall, is sufficient and more aesthetically pleasing for all. Back when you voted many years ago to pass this, residents had virtually no input or very little when the RTM voted to build the existing structure. A lot has changed, and the full picture of the negative impact was not known then. However, people have spoken, and I actually thought it was 3-1, but someone mentioned 4-1 vote in favor on not a 7A, but a smaller pavilion. Perhaps we can use the savings to heat Jackie Durrell all year round, and your daughter could get married there after all. But we will say that the noise, the traffic, the safety issues, those are all things that are important to all of us to keep away from beautiful beach area. And also keep in mind that revenue stream that everyone dreams of with 7A, that may never come to be. That may just be a pipe dream. Sounds like those in favor of the larger pavilion and the banquet hall are really letting their emotions and nostalgia get in the way of sound thinking. Some of the examples were far-reaching. So your job is to really listen to your constituents who do not want 7A, do not gamble with their money. And if all else fails, that sand dune might actually save us some money. So thank you.
I'm Jill Kelly. I live on Running Road in Fairfield. I'm here tonight because of my concerns, which have been confirmed by many. Thank you. First of all, this Penfield property was in private ownership until March 22nd, 1976, when the RTM voted to appropriate $1,800,000 for the purchase of the old Sunhaven Beach Club, then owned by Carmen Totoro. I was there. I was the only Republican who voted for the purchase, as a matter of fact. But then there were only 6 Republicans on the RTM. Given the town's 375-year history, this is hardly a historic icon that some have suggested. In fact, for most of the town's ownership, this building has been an embarrassing eyesore, and I submit this for you people. Second, we must all be sensitive to our escalating property taxes and how Fairfield homeowners are being financially stretched. I wonder why, therefore, we have the urgent need to build yet another banquet hall. Right now, those of us who do not belong to a country club have access to the Durrell Pavilion, the Fairfield Museum and History Center's beautiful facility, the historic Burr Homestead, the Smith Richardson facility on Hoydens Hill, and the new tennis center on Knoll Dam Road. Private ownership venues include the Oak Room at Fairfield University, the Scandinavian Club, and the Gaelic American Club. According to recent phone inquiries, all of these facilities rent out for about the same amount as has been suggested for Penfield. Why should we duplicate our existing resources or take away from their rental income? As Mr. Tetreault said earlier in his speech this evening, we seem to have just about something for everybody. Third, and this should probably be the first point, the Flood and Erosion Control Board has serious reservations about the bulkhead for this project, and to my knowledge, their concerns have not been addressed. If that is so, should not this be done before we go any further? Finally, the Building Committee looked into a number of options that could have been presented to you. Regrettably, they chose to present this largest option.
Mrs. Kelly, that's time.
Okay. This has all the thing, again to quote Mr. Tetreault, the ADA restrooms and everything else. We do not need the more expensive plan or this, and I support option 9. Thank you.
Thank you.
Herb Limecooler, 83 Spruce Street. I'd like to speak in opposition to option 7A. At least I think it's premature to vote in favor of that tonight. First, I wanted to talk about our debt. The latest available CERC town profile data shows that relative to other lower Fairfield County towns, we were in the middle of the pack in debt as a percentage of grand list at 1.2% and debt service as a percentage of town expenditures at 8% in fiscal year 12. But since that time, and recent town documents show our debt level to have grown and now is approaching a level of 10% of debt service as a percentage of total spending. Town officials seem to be okay with a higher debt as long as it does not risk our AAA rating. But this level of debt places us in a more leveraged, riskier fiscal position and crowds out discretionary spending options while placing added pressure on us, the taxpayers. Escaping this higher level of debt will take years, but we need to start sometime. So my point number one, town officials should exert every effort to control the debt level and the resulting debt service. Point number two, as a town, we have a poor record in vetting and managing projects and upfront due diligence and also ongoing project management. Point number three, most of you have run on a platform of controlling taxes. Voters expect you to deliver on that promise in carefully evaluating all spending projects. So, a growing debt, a poor record in capital projects, your pledge to control taxes. Don't residents have a right to expect that every capital project should now go under the microscope, beginning with Penfield? But inadequate research into the cost of option 9, many unanswered questions about FEMA reimbursement, weak support of option 7A, revenues and expenses, with no risk assessment of deviation from those projections.
Thank you very much.
It hasn't happened. Thank you.
Hi, Jim Rothwell, 461 Lally Boulevard. I have a different perspective to offer people. I'm a newcomer to Fairfield. My family lived in Westport for 15 years before we bought in the beach neighborhood. And I'd like to put to rest one question which has been raised, which is, will the larger pavilion with the banquet hall make the neighborhood and the town less attractive to prospective buyers? Yes, absolutely. We would have been less interested in this neighborhood, and we would have been willing to pay less for our house had we known that this was the option that was favored. We're very much in favor of having a great facility there, with changing facilities, food, even lockers, but not a banquet facility. Fairfield has two really unique assets. There's a character of that neighborhood which is unique. We have looked all around Fairfield County at different neighborhoods, and that neighborhood with the quiet streets, children playing in the streets, people walking their dogs, families coming out of their houses and talking to each other, there aren't many neighborhoods like that. And the beauty of the beach is unique as well. It is the nicest stretch of beach in Fairfield County, and we've looked at all of them. So what I've heard here tonight is really two things. One thing we don't know and one thing we do know. What we don't know is whether this will make money or lose money for the town. We can debate that as long as we want, but having lived through the financial crisis and hearing a lot of smart people be sure about their numbers, I'm sure that no one in this room will know whether this is going to make money or lose money. What we do know is that the people want a smaller facility here. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, Sherry Stenick, Rockridge Road. I'm one of the townspeople too, and I am in favor of 7A. This was debated 5 years ago when this was built. There were plenty of public hearings for the woman who said nobody discussed it. The building committee who sat through most of those would be very surprised to hear that. This is pretty much what they chose before. The storm ruined it. It takes time to figure out what's going on and what reimbursements might be. There's a process. When Mr. Flato was in charge, people complained that he evaded the process. Now we take time to do the process. Now it's taking too long. Then we get to a decision, and people stand here and do the same thing all over again, which is, oh, well, we don't like the decision that the group that evaluated everything came up with, so let's micromanage it from the back seat now. I'm tired of it. I've been tired of it for a long time. That's why I'm not here anymore. And so I just want to tell you all, think about what you're doing. There is a process. We've gone through it. We've decided this twice now, essentially, in 5 years' time. Unfortunately, there was a storm. Miss Israel, who was mentioned, has a house near the beach, which she is rebuilding. So even though she thinks there's going to be another tremendous storm coming, and there very well may be, and there might not be, she's rebuilding. I don't see her house on the market yet. Thank you.
Jan Reber, Beaumont Street. Thank you, Mr. Bradley, as I promised I would thank you.
Penfield Pavilion sits damaged in the snow more than 2 years after Sandy ravaged it. Clearly, it wasn't properly designed the last time, although no one's been held accountable for that. Now you're going to authorize spending $6 million more. Did you know that the Penfield Committee has not hired a coastal engineer to determine the best flood protection for the pavilion and the neighborhood? How's that even possible? The Flood and Erosion Control Board has not endorsed option 7A. You've been told that a rebuilt pavilion will pay for itself and generate a surplus to pay off the outstanding $4 million in debt. That proposition rests, in part, on the assertion that revenues and costs for the pavilion will increase at a steady rate of 2% a year for 30 years, not 20, 30. Do you expect your own utilities and insurance to increase at a steady 2% a year? Are labor costs going to hold steady at 2%? If you collect a paycheck, I'm sure you hope that isn't true. Turning to FEMA reimbursement, did you know that the proposal before you includes an extra $100,000 to move the pavilion in a direction that will protect one existing tree? Do you really think FEMA is going to give us $100,000 to protect a tree? FEMA's denied millions of dollars of claims, and it's clawing back others. Just ask the New Jersey towns that followed FEMA guidelines and are now each being told to give back $600,000 or more. Clearly, a vote on option 7A can't be based on the overly optimistic scenario presented to you by the administration. You're in a situation that often faces the RTM. You must make a decision with incomplete or last-minute information. You're made to look like obstructionists if you don't give the administration what they want when they want it. I hope you'll listen to your constituents, you'll demand more complete and realistic information, and you'll demonstrate that the RTM is not a rubber stamp for every spending scheme right before you.
Good evening, Stephen Scheinberg, Flax Road. This proposal, I am here to support option 7A and ask the RTM to approve it. This proposal was approved by a bipartisan Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance based on it's a good investment. We're spending $1 million. There will be revenue generated, so on fiscal grounds, we should all, as fiscal conservatives, be supportive of this option. On environmental grounds, this is not a pristine beach. There has been a pavilion there for many years. There are houses on the beach, and so there's no reason on environmental grounds to be against this proposal. By my count, we have here about 22 people, 22 RTM members that are going to support this. So we're very close. It's going to be a close vote. So I'm calling on all the people on the RTM that are undecided at this point to be leaders. Yes, you have to listen to your constituents, but you are elected as leaders, and sometimes your constituents could be wrong about what's necessary for the town's good. I understand people in the neighborhood may not be for it, and I understand Fairfield taxpayers are against it. And I also must mention, when a survey is done by a certain group, any group, and in this situation it's Fairfield taxpayers, it has to be, to me, a biased survey. So that, to me, you need to throw out as evidence of what the constituents think. So I ask you, and I believe the Democratic caucus will mostly be for it, so it's up to you as the Republicans to decide if you're going to be for the future of the town and build this and vote for option 7A. If you don't believe you have the votes, Mr. Bateson, I would ask you to please caucus after the public time, after you talk, to sit down with your Republican friends and get the support needed to push this through. It's about time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just ask you not to address individual members of the body. Thank you.
Hi, Bud Morton, Sasko Hill Road. It was a terrible storm, but Sandy has given the town an opportunity to reconsider what we want on our beach. Thinking of what Representative Jacobs said earlier, think in terms of a pavilion that is not too big, not too small, but just right. Option 7A is too big. It is also too expensive at a time when we are carefully rationing our capital expenditures. It's also ugly. To many, it looks like a rest stop on the New Jersey Turnpike. And it won't pay for itself because the profit projections are inflated. For example, why would revenues from concessions and parking be over 70% higher for a big pavilion than for a nice smaller pavilion with the same concession stand? For another example, how can the banquet hall increase its volume and revenues by 133% with only a 24% increase in costs, including heat, electricity, and operations. One final example, how can the town run a business like this with tons of paperwork for liability insurance and liquor laws with no allowance for the cost of any management? There is no allowance for management costs in the projections. We don't really need a second banquet hall on Penfield Beach. We don't need to punish the beach area residents with a town business that wants to run more than 300 events a year, year-round. We can save at least $2 million by building a really nice, smaller pavilion that is much more attractive. If we want a year-round pavilion, we can heat Durrell for a lot less than $2 million. The smaller pavilion is not only cheaper and much more attractive, it has much lower risk in terms of cost overruns.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much.
John Convertito, Oyster Road, District 10. I think I'm one of the few people in this room that served on the original Penfield Building Committee. And our charge back then was to build a banquet hall, winterize it, build a concession stand, a commercial kitchen, a lifeguard station, a handicap accessible facility, okay, all of which we did, okay, all of which is before you today. It is the same charge that was done 5 years ago, okay. I ask you to vote in favor of 7A. It's what the town wanted 5 years ago. In my heart, I believe they still want it, okay. You can listen to all the surveys that you want, okay. I personally took that survey 25 times. There was no lockout on it. Thank you very much.
Very good, very good. Mark Soretta, Lally Boulevard. I vote no to option 7A. To echo everyone else's feelings here, you know, all the beach residents want a new pavilion. We just don't agree with the second banquet hall. To think that the revenue stream from the banquet hall is going to pay off over $2 million over the years is not a reality. My company manages many food service contracts in New England. Orono Country Club is one of them for over 10 years, Tashawa Golf Course for 3 years. And I pretty much know the business in and out, and after listening to the projected expenses to manage this pavilion, I don't agree with any of that. To echo the fellow before me, there was nothing in there for management. The expenses I heard there that night were they're just not a reality. And I also think that we should let the people vote on this. Thank you.
I'm sorry, sir. Mr. Bass is the last speaker.
Why?
I asked for everyone to stand up and get in line. I'm sorry, sir, you weren't lined up.
Okay.
I don't know if this will stay up.
Mr. Bass, you're using your 2 minutes. Please step to the microphone. You can submit your stuff for record after you're spoken.
Ian Bass, Lally Boulevard. I'm the president of Fair Acres Association, over 400 homes in the Penfield Beach area. I'm also a member of the Penfield Building Committee, and I can tell you that we can have option 9 up and running for the summer of 2016. It's very easy for people to stand before you and give their opinions, and I think opinions are just that, and I validate everyone's opinions, but I think for honesty's sake, I'd like to give you some facts. And I'll run through them quickly, so you'll have to forgive me. A fact, there is no evidence that the Parks and Rec Department nor the town of Fairfield have ever done 20 or 30-year revenue projections. The budget is a 3-year plan, and even that gets modified along the way. The Penfield Pavilion, in fact, which has been owned by the town for approximately 35 years, really only has 1 year track history as a all-season, full-year banquet facility, and that was 2011-2012. Fact, there are no guarantees from FEMA before, during, or after construction of the project with respect to reimbursements. The town may have historical data on government reimbursements when we build schools, but not FEMA projects. The net cost to the town for 7A could easily approach and exceed $2 million, and in the reports that you have that have been handed out by the town, when adding back in for the estimated ineligible FEMA costs, it's right in your sheet, it's approximately $1.8 million net cost to the town, not $900,000. So yes, there is some fuzzy math. You just have to understand how to read through it. Fact, several other communities have experienced FEMA denying reimbursement claims that they previously led the town to believe was eligible, and that there are at least one published report of FEMA attempting to claw back more than $650,000 they'd already paid to the town. Fact, for those who are hung up on the potential loss of revenue with no banquet hall, there have been over 20 homes in the beach area that have been either completely rebuilt or replaced as a result of Storm Sandy, with another 10 to 20 to come. In each case, the property taxes on the new house has increased dramatically and in many cases doubled. The net increase in tax revenue to the town far exceeds the revenues any pavilion will generate, and we don't have to build
Thank you,
anything.
Mr. Bass. Back to the body. I know Representative Perugini wished to address the body. If there are any other members, I want to try and limit comments to 1 minute. If you've already spoken, please try and defer to people who have not had a chance at the microphone. I would also like to know if there are any members from our ex officio table who would like to speak to the item this evening. I see the chairman of the Board of Finance is here. Yes. Okay. All right. Representative Perugini, thank you graciously for waiting. Yes. I see Representative Ryan and then Representative Zesma.
Bill Perugini, District 10. That is Perugini. Just a couple points of clarity in case there was any doubt. I am not opposed to a pavilion. I'm opposed to option 7A for many reasons. Secondly, relative to the Fairfield Beach Residents Association, I love my colleague, Representative Caffarelli, and I love Paige Sherman. I, too, sit on the board of directors for the Fairfield Beach Residents Association, as does Alyssa Israel. I think the fact that she's not selling her home doesn't have any bearing on whether or not this is a prudent decision. And lastly, just relative to some of the comments about getting it done, we're close. We're very, very close. Let us not risk an aggressive play and lose the game. Does that sound familiar? So let's not lose the game. We're close. Let's figure this out before we lose big. Thank you very much.
Representative Ryan.
Hi, Bruce Ryan, District 10. I got to be very short about this. I've gone back and forth on this decision 4 times in the last 2 weeks, met with several people who represent various sides of the story, have been lobbied by some of the people who my colleagues here and at the Board of Finance. And I think the most important thing to me here is I hear personally from people I've talked to in my district, as well as some people outside of the beach area, that they don't want a large pavilion. They want a smaller pavilion. And to me, that's the most overriding thing. The public is being ignored, and for whatever reason, I don't know, to push something through. And I will not vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Representative Zesma.
Liz Esma, District 6, if I may. As a freshman member of this body, I am paying close attention not only to my constituents, but what is being asked of our town leaders by my colleagues in this body. Time and time again, I hear calls for running the town like a business, making the town more affordable, lowering taxes, creating revenue, and being fiscally responsible. I can tell you that my constituents want us to maintain the services and quality of life that they chose Fairfield for. Among other things, that does include our school system and shared assets that are unique to our town, that are desirable selling points, and which keep our home values high, and I agree with them. We are now charged with deciding how best to remedy the repair of Penfield 1. I want to thank the Penfield Building Committee and all town employees, including certainly our first selectmen, who have worked so hard to provide thorough and professional analysis for each option developed. We are very fortunate to have such a dedicated and talented team. Option 7A has been described by members of both parties as fiscally responsible. In other words, and as the saying goes, it is the rubber and we are the road. I intend to vote for this measure based on the merits of the information before us. However, I will not be swayed by outside forces or groups that offer unsubstantiated claims, unverified analysis, including questionable revenue projections. And neither should any of you. I encourage all of you to vote in favor of 7A. Thank you.
Representative Gerber.
Bill Gerber, District 4, and I'm not going to thank the building committee because no thanks could be enough. So, you guys are saints. I stress tested the cash flow projections on 7A myself, and I think it's fair to sort of push back on the assumptions. I think we went through many, many rounds of questions and answers, but there's still risk, and so I thought I'd try to get to sort of a range, a reasonable range. And so what I did was I took the 190 events that we get to by year 3, and I reduced that by 20%. That gets to 150 events. I think the 2% annual increase is actually incredibly reasonable considering how bloody cheap this thing is to rent. It's ridiculously cheap. It's $9.25 for a session, and we could easily charge a lot more. I agree with Representative Palmer on that. At 2% by the year 2045, we'd be paying $1,570 to rent the facility. It doesn't seem unreasonable, but just for yucks, I reduced it to 1%. That would be $1,200 by the year 2045. I reduced the differential on the concession fees and on the parking revenue by 50% and increased that by 1% per year instead of 2%. And when I did that, I reduced revenue by $4.4 million. I reduced the expense increases by 1%. That reduced expenses by $0.7 million. And still, at the end of the projection period, the cumulative total was $1.3 million positive. So I think by piling on like that, I was still positive. I piled on a little bit more by putting the expenses back to 2%, and I got to $0.8 million. I piled on even more by reducing the FEMA reimbursement to $2 million instead of 2.6, and I'm still positive at 0.2. And so my conclusion is that there's a range, obviously, and someone said, we don't know exactly what we're going to get from this, but there's something about this projections that sort of bother me. I think there's something missing. If you have a pile of sand at the end of 30 years, or you have a facility at the end of 30 years, sort of what we have had and what we're proposing, they sort of have a slightly different terminal value. And that is not factored in here. So we have a facility at the end of the 30-year projection period that I assume, you'd take out some maintenance and sort of, I'm sure there'd be some rebuild costs. But we have a facility. It's an asset for the town at the end of 30 years, and that's not counted here anywhere. So that's pretty conservative. Anyway, my point is, regardless of what you think of the projections being too aggressive or not, I feel pretty comfortable that with some pretty serious stresses, one on top of another, obviously it could be worse, but you have to look at a reasonable range. This is at worst cost neutral, and at best probably significantly positive for the town. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there anybody, Representative Meyer? Eventually I'll get it.
Gaylord Meyer, District 1. I think what I'm hearing tonight is what I'm not hearing. My constituents have made it quite clear that they are for something, but they're not for 7A. I have the same resistance to voting for 7A for many of the reasons that most of you have spoken to. But I think I have to go with what my people in District 1 want, and they do not want 7A. Do we want something? Yes. They want something, and they also feel that there could be something smaller that could represent and everybody could have access to the beaches, they could have, you know, the concession stands, they can have all of those things. But there are a lot of unanswered questions here, and I feel what I'm hearing is, oh, just vote for it, let's get it done. Well, we did that maybe a couple of times, and we're now looking at overages on Osborne Hill, we're looking at overages on Ludlow, we're looking at overages at Ward, and a few other capital buildings procedures or things that we're going to have to pay for. I think we need to take our time and do it right. And I think what the people are saying, 7A is not it. I will be voting no.
Is there anyone who has not spoken to the issue who would like to speak to the issue at this time? First Selectman Tetro. Oh. You can call the question. I recognized Vice Chairman Brown. I would like to at least recognize the people that I did earlier recognize. I did not recognize Representative Malaragno before Mr. Farnan is proposing his.
I will let the rest of the members of the RTM speak and then call the question immediately after that. That makes sense. Fair.
You can. Is there a second?
I second that, and it's a point of order. And actually, I don't think
it's not debatable. The first selectman gets to speak. He's right. He does. I did recognize the first selectman. He does get to speak.
I would defer to the first selectman, but it's not debatable, so after that, I would second his motion and call the question.
Representative Caffarelli, you're out of order because I have not recognized you.
Oh, thank you. Just a couple quick things. One, the Ward roof project, to the best of my knowledge, has not been reported as over budget, at least not to me and the Board of Selectmen. But I will look into that, but that, at the moment, I will classify as a rumor as opposed to fact. Second, this body, through both subcommittee meetings, has had more detailed presentations, more detailed questions, has had a chance to check with the town chief fiscal officer, who I should point out is a CPA, and to the best of my knowledge, all the numbers put together, his is the only number set put together by a CPA who specializes in doing this. Also, we have not cut a single dollar of school security in favor of this project. In fact, I don't think we've cut a single dollar of school security in favor of any project. School security is the #1 project, and I challenge anybody to find where we cut that dollars. There isn't anything more important than the safety of our kids. We have taken time to do this, and we have taken time to do this because the classic problem in American society is a rush to solve a problem with an answer and solve the wrong problem. We took time to do two things: make sure we understood the problem, and the engineers and the building committee made sure to do that, and second, to make sure that everybody was represented and the opinions were here. Whichever side of this question you're on, we made sure that you had a chance to get heard. That's happening tonight, and that's happened at prior meetings. The Fairfield debt level, as I pointed out in the State of the Town, as rated or as graded by the rating agencies, is defined as low. I don't know if you can get better than low, but it's defined as low. So that's about as an objective standard as we get. We don't have to borrow anymore. We're not required to borrow anymore. But understand that the rating agencies have classified our debt level as low. There were comments about saving $2 million. And again, for those of you that sat through the presentations, you heard Mr. Mayor step through the cost of this project at the end of building based on reasonable estimates of both costs and revenues is $943,000 that would be bonded over 20 years. So that's just under $50,000 a year. Over 20 years. And we have the use of the facility, and we have revenues to help pay that off. So there are a couple points here. And then lastly, to the neighborhood, as well as to everybody here, this facility, 2 pavilions, have existed for 30 years. They're only open in the summer together because Penfield 2 is only available when it's rented, first of all. It's not available every day to residents in the beach. its restrooms cannot be used during the day. Second, Penfield 1 would only be open in the winter, so only one pavilion would be open in the winter. There have not been an inordinate amount of noise and traffic issues. Jerry Lombardo, first thing we did in looking at this is go to the police and check the police reports. I get a police report every week of the activity in the beach area. It is not about the pavilions. These pavilions haven't been a problem for 30 years in terms of noise or traffic. They won't be a problem in the next 30 years because of noise or traffic. On top of that, if the pavilions become an issue, we will make sure that if we have to, we will charge the tenants or the renters for having police at that facility to make sure that they leave on a timely basis and don't do anything untoward on that. And that's a commitment to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Representative Caffarelli pointed out that he is able to interrupt on a calling of the question, so I apologize sincerely. Representative Farnan has moved to call the question. That requires a 2/3 vote, and we will do a roll call vote for that. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Michael Hurley?
Yes.
Jay Lipp?
He wants to move to a vote. He wants to end discussion and move right to a vote.
Jay Lipp? Gaylord Meyer? Eric Sundman? Pete Ambrose?
Yes.
Catherine Burstein? Keith Varian?
Yes.
Ed Bateson?
Yes.
Sam Cargill? Hank Ferentz?
Yes.
Dave McKenzie?
Yes.
Mary McCullough? Heather Dean?
No.
Bill Gerber? Joe Palmer? Cindy Waldron?
No.
Josh Garskoff?
Yes.
Lauren O'Brien? Andrew Semmel? Carol Way? Julie Gottlieb? Alan Marks? Joe Seibert? Jay Walk?
Yes.
Liz Ezema? Jen Hochberg?
No.
Kevin Hopkins?
Yes.
Eric Newman?
Yes.
Phil Pierce?
Yes.
Al Schwartz?
Yes.
Kathy Braun?
Yes, in favor of calling the question. Yes.
Alex Durrell? Thank you. Jason Lee? Tom McCarthy? Jeff Melrano? Pamela Iacono?
Abstain.
Ellen Jacob? Laura McCardle? Carol Pontrelli? Chris Timniak? Brian Caffarelli? Brian Farnan? Bill Perugini?
Yes.
Bruce Ryan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. The motion passed. As a point of order, you cannot interrupt to end debate, just so you know, but I will research that. The point is moot, but just moving forward, I will research that, for future use. We will now move to a vote on this issue. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Michael Hurley?
Yes.
Jay Lipp?
No.
Gaylord Meyer?
No.
Eric Sundman?
No.
Pete Ambrose?
Yes.
Catherine Burstein? Keith Varian?
Yes.
Ed Bateson?
Yes.
Sam Cargill?
Yes.
Hank Ferentz?
Yes.
Dave McKenzie?
No.
Mary McCullough?
No.
Heather Dean?
Yes.
Joe Palmer?
Yes.
Bill Gerber?
Yes.
Cindy Waldron?
Yes.
Josh Garskoff?
Yes.
Lauren O'Brien?
No.
Andrew Semmel?
Yes.
Carol Way?
Yes.
Julie Gottlieb?
Yes.
Alan Marks?
Yes.
Joe Seibert?
Yes.
Jay Walk?
Yes.
Liz Ezema?
Yes.
Jen Hochberg?
Yes.
Kevin Hopkins?
Yes.
Eric Newman?
Yes.
Phil Pierce?
Yes.
Hal Schwartz?
Yes.
Kathy Braun?
No.
Alex Durrell?
Yes.
Jason Lee?
Yes.
Tom McCarthy?
Yes.
Jeff Melrano?
No.
Pamela Iacono?
Yes.
Ellen Jacob?
No.
Laura McCardle?
Yes.
Carol Pontrelli?
No.
Chris Timniak?
No.
Brian Caffarelli?
Yes.
Brian Farnan. Bill Perugini.
No.
Bruce Ryan.
No.
The motion passes 29-15. Item number 10 on our agenda. To consider and act upon a redistricting ordinance as recommended by the RTM Redistricting Ordinance Subcommittee. May I have a motion to approve? Representative Hurley, seconded by Representative Caffarelli. Please be quiet as you clear the room. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this motion? Representative O'Brien. I think that's Mike's working now.
Lauren O'Brien. Could you keep it down in the back, please? Thank you. Lauren O'Brien, District 5. I've spoken to this before. I know I'm not popular tonight, and my opinion isn't popular, but I'm on a roll. I've done a lot of work for my constituents in District 5. It's too much work. To take away one person is insane. You've all done work for your constituents.
Representative O'Brien, I'm sorry, we've had that amendment and we've discussed it already.
Okay, I will not be supporting this because I feel we need all the people that we have to get done what we need to get done.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, all in favor, please, can we do this by voice vote? All in favor of this particular ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Please raise your hands. Representative O'Brien, Representative Jacob, Representative Braun. Abstentions? None. The motion passes. Thank you. I know I'm speaking out of order, but thank you so much to the redistricting committee, Representative Marks, Representative Pierce, Representative Timiak. It was no easy feat, and I really enjoyed working with all of you. We have an automatic adjournment time at 11 o'clock. Do I need to entertain a motion to extend, or you think we can get this done? We're going to get it done, all right. Item number 11, to consider and act upon a Fair TV ordinance sponsored by Selectman Sheila Marmion and Representative Catherine Braun, District 8. May I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative McCullough, seconded by Representative Lee. Is there any discussion on this item? I believe the sponsors, would you like to speak to anything? Representative Braun. And Selectman Marmion. And I believe the microphone is now working. Do they have that at their seat, or? Okay. I don't have it.
Hi, everybody. Sheila Marmion, Selectman. You received 2 amendments this afternoon, and the amendments are basically designed to address an issue that's come up. These 2 amendments would strictly limit Fair TV to covering public meetings and events, with core elected bodies remaining the primary content, and then we'd have the secondary content, which would be covering things like the Memorial Day Parade, et cetera. But what these amendments do is take out
the production of programs, because that had been an issue that was raised in terms of, well, just in terms of the fact that Fair TV wanted to be truly known as the C-SPAN of Fairfield. They just want to cover these events, no editorializing, no production of extra content. So that's the primary, those are the primary things in front of you. That wasn't put in nice legalese terms, so I'll ask my colleague Kathy to do that.
So we have an ordinance to create a permanent commission. We worked very closely with the Fair TV committee, and we've reached out to many other officials in town and answered all the questions and, you know, rose above all the hurdles. The main goal of the legislation is to create, again, a permanent commission that's independent. That's one reason we have the unanimous Board of Selectmen approval of commissioners. We don't want a minority voice to be overruled. It's similar to the Ethics Commission in that regard. You need independence when you appoint these commissioners. So it would be the unanimous Board of Selectmen, and then the RTM would approve as well. We also wanted the committee wanted very strong broadcast standards, and that's what we are seeking this amendment about, which we'll go through in a moment. We've had several questions and challenges about it. The most recent was a private citizen solicited a letter from a lawyer who said it's unconstitutional. And while I didn't agree with that, and neither did the committee chair that we were working with, however, we re-looked at it and we decided to streamline the language, make it a little stronger, clearer, and unassailable. So basically, the ordinance, as amended before you, is very strong, very clear. It basically says we cover what they cover now. It will continue to be covered exactly what they cover now. In the past year, they had 600 hours of coverage. 0 was special creative programming. It was all the primary content that were boards and commissions that are elected bodies, secondary, and that's basically what we're going to continue covering once this is approved. So with that in mind, I would propose an amendment, and you have a copy on your desks, on your tables. The amendment, basically, amendment number 1 simply deletes a clause from the last half of the last sentence of 74-4. It deletes the clause that says, and channel appropriate nonpartisan informational programming produced by Fair TV. There won't be creative programming produced by Fair TV. It will cover everything that it covers now and that it's always covered. It will not stop. But there won't be that question, that niggling question that was challenged by several people. The other amendment simply makes the rest of the ordinance consistent and clarifies a couple of minor points. So, for example, we deleted section, if you could look at the next section, there's the red lines that shows up. We deleted section 8 in its entirety. It was no longer necessary. That seemed to be a point of contention. It's redundant, not needed. We deleted it because we're not having private programming. You don't need to say who's allowed to use it and who's not allowed to use it. So the changes are minor, and they basically all come from that goal, which is to have a strong broadcast standard so the world and the town and the population can see exactly what they saw here tonight and not have, you know, basically a bunch of politicians trying to juggle for space and to have their own shows. So with that in mind, unless you have something to add, I'll propose. Okay. Madam Moderator, I'd like to propose an amendment, and I can either read it or I can simply refer to the handout.
If you could refer to the handout, that would be helpful.
Okay, there's a handout labeled Amendments to Fair TV Ordinance on the RTM warning for 12615. Amendment number 1 deletes the phrase I just mentioned. Amendment number 2 has slight revisions with some substitute language for 74-3, 74-4, 74-5, and 74-6. And it also deletes 74-8, and then it, of course, renumbers the following sections.
Thank you. So your amendment is to amend the ordinance as submitted under Amendments to Fair TV Ordinance on the RTM warning for 1-26-2015. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is there a second? Seconded by Representative McCullough. Is there any discussion on the amendment and the amendment only? Excellent. Seeing none, I'd like to, Representative Garskoff on the amendment.
Josh Garskoff, District 5. I received this, I think, in my email today. I haven't had a chance to process it. I have nothing, no prejudice against it, but I'm not prepared to vote on this today.
Okay. That's Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, District 4. I too received this, and I'm trying to kind of understand all the ins and outs. I had abstained during the committee meeting with regards to if we could have this kind of wording in place and it should be amended. And I'd like to, if it's possible, and I'm not sure, go through you to the town attorney to ask for an opinion regarding this amendment. And I'm interested in possibly tabling this item until next month for further review. But I'm not sure exactly the Robert rules.
You may go through me to the town attorney.
Please.
Yes. Yes. Oh, thank you. Are we certain that we do not want to extend? If we can't finish the items before us this evening, that means we have to reconvene tomorrow.
What's the motion? I'll make the motion.
Okay. Just give me a motion to extend. Suspend the rules and
Thank you,
extend.
Madam Mayor. I make a motion to
Suspend
extend
the
the meeting
rules.
past the rules.
Thank you. Thank you. To take up new business beyond 11 p.m. Thank you. Is there a second? All in favor? Opposed? Representative Varian. Abstentions? Item passes. Thank you. Attorney Lesser.
I too got the proposed amendments today. I looked at them for the first time this afternoon, and they do answer some of the questions I had. There's no question about that. I really haven't had a chance to review them in detail. I think that probably tabling it is a good idea. Let us tweak this a little bit. There are still a couple of concerns, even with the amended resolution or ordinance that I have, one of which is how you're going to handle the people that are ultimately going to either work or do services for this commission. And the second is how the finances are going to be handled. I also think, at the very least, you need a provision in here, and I didn't see it, that the commission is going to be responsible for seeing that state and federal regs and ordinances are followed. That should be in here at the very least, but that's a minor thing. But again, what I'm primarily concerned about right now is finances and authority. I mean, I don't think you can have a town employee, and I think that ultimately you're going to have employees here. The commission's going to have to work that out. You can't have an employee reporting just to a commission. Yeah, I'm talking about the amendment. I think it needs a little further study and a little further work.
Okay. All right, thank you. I won't be supporting the amendment. I feel that we need more time to look at this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the body? Representative Walk.
Jay Wolk, District 6. I also think we should table this to the next meeting. We need more discussion on this, considering that we just got more information on this and we haven't had enough time to regurgitate it. So I am in support of going to next month with this vote.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this item, the amendment only? Representative Gaylord Meyer. Sure. That's where I was going anyway. Would anyone from the public wish to address the amendment and the amendment only? I'm sorry, now you know what happens to the moderator after 10:45.
After watching the last 2 hours, I'd be very nervous about addressing anything but the amendment, Madam Moderator. Jim Kennelly, Chairman of the Fair TV Committee. I urge you to adopt the amendments tonight, and I urge you to adopt this ordinance tonight. Let's be clear. The reason why these amendments are getting to you now is because after having this ordinance as written since September, the town attorney has now told you that he needs more time. I'm not going to get into some of his commentary on other issues, but simply here, As was mentioned by Ms. Braun, we do 600 hours of program. We did 600 hours of programming in the last year. And that programming, 35 hours was secondary content. Of that 35 hours, 0 were produced programs. Now, there was no view on the part of the committee or of the sponsors that the very last minute, which was you received on Friday, I thought it reminded me of Casablanca, where the
Mr.
guy says,
Kennelly,
I'm
can you
surprised
wrap it
again.
up?
I'll wrap it up, where the town attorney was surprised gambling was going on here. The rationale for this amendment to get it passed was because the town attorney popped out with this amendment that used with an opinion that included obscenity statute and a whistleblower ordinance.
Thank you,
So,
Mr.
it's-
Kennelly.
please
Thank
pass
you,
it.
thank you, Mr. Kennelly. Back to the body. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no one, are we ready to vote? Okay. On the amendment and the amendment only. We're voting on the amendment and the amendment only. Roll call vote. Those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Will the clerk please call the roll? Thank you.
Need this mic?
Michael Hurley.
Yes.
Jay Lip. Yes. Gaylord Meyer. Yes. Eric Sunman.
Yes.
Pete Ambrose.
Yes.
Catherine Burstein. Yes. Keith Varian.
Yes.
Ed Bateson.
Yes.
Sam Cargill.
Yes.
Hank Ferentz.
Yes.
Dave McKenzie.
Yes.
Mary McCullough. Heather Dean.
No.
Bill Gerber.
Yes.
Joe Palmer.
Yes.
Cindy Waldron.
Yes.
Josh Garskoff. Lauren O'Brien. Andrew Semmel.
Yes.
Carol Way.
Yes.
Julie Gottlieb.
Yes.
Alan Marks. Oh, you didn't tell me. Joe Seibert.
Abstain.
Jay Walk.
No.
Liz Esma.
Yes.
Jen Hochberg.
Abstain.
Kevin Hopkins.
Abstain.
Eric Newman.
No.
Phil Pierce.
No.
Hal Schwartz.
Abstain.
Kathy Braun.
Yes.
Alex Durrell.
Yes.
Jason Lee.
Yes.
Tom McCarthy.
Yes.
Jeff Malrano.
Yes.
Pamela Iacono.
Yes.
Ellen Jacob.
Yes.
Lori McCardle.
Yes.
Carol Pontrelli.
Yes.
Chris Timniak.
Yes.
Brian Caffarelli.
Yes.
Brian Farnan. Bill Perugini.
Yes.
Bruce Ryan.
Yes.
Yes. 4 no, 5 abstentions.
34 yes, 4 no, 5 abstentions. The amendment passes. We are now back to the main motion. Is there any further discussion on the main motion before us? Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, District 4. You know, I really struggled with this one, and I've been following it very closely. I feel very strongly that this body needs to move towards legislation in general. And here's an ordinance before us, and this is exactly the kind of thing we're looking for. But what I don't want to do is rush into legislation that's flawed. And I believe that there's some flaws. And I think that those flaws can be worked out. And I think that we can have a really great ordinance in place. I think we can have Fair TV continue doing the job that it's doing, and it meets the needs of the community, and that this body will be proud and feel confident that it put forward legislation that is good. I just don't think that it's ready right now, and my motion is to table the item until next month, where it can be, those problems can be addressed, the wording can be corrected, and we can bring it forward and be what we want it to be.
Representative Dean, just to be clear, do you wish to table this item, or do
Yes.
you wish to postpone it?
I'd like to, I'd like to table it to postpone it.
To a
To
date
next month.
certain, the next meeting.
Mhm.
Is there a second? Representative Pierce, is there any discussion on the postponement? Representative Bateson.
Ed Bateson, District 3. Thank you, Madam Moderator. At this time, I don't support a motion to postpone. We've had ample opportunity, and the town attorney has had ample opportunity to address these issues. The only two issues I'm hearing tonight have to do with personnel and financing. Both those issues are in the ordinance, and they've been addressed. If there was a problem with them, I would have expected this to have been identified months ago. At this time, I'm seeing nothing that would preclude us from moving forward on this issue, and I do not support a motion to postpone. I really think we need to act on this evening. Thank you.
I'd recognize the town attorney, Mr. Lesser.
I had a number of meetings, both in person and on the telephone, with the sponsors of this motion. On January 20th, I sent them an email in which I said, among other things, Section 74-11, the Commission cannot be the supervisory authority for employees or independent contractors for that matter. It has no authority to hire employees or enter into contracts. It certainly cannot discipline people. The Commission can certainly recommend to the proper authority, but there needs to be someone in the administration, such as the first selectman or a department head, to whom these people report. The zoning and conservation directors report to the first selectman on matters of administration and to their respective commissions on matters of policy. That is a good policy. To date, I haven't seen this ordinance change to reflect those comments. That's what I was talking about before. This email was sent over 2 weeks ago. You people can pass this if you want. That's fine. I just don't think that it's a proper ordinance right now.
May I address that, Madam Moderator?
Yes, I recognize Representative Braun.
Okay. On December 11th, I received something from Attorney Lesser saying Section 74-12 is okay as it goes, but I think it should spell out the role of the first selectman or board of selectmen. And 74-12 at that time was the professional services. There is nothing wrong with the commission selecting who they want to do the professional services. They go through an RFP process. I've talked to purchasing. I talked to Ms. Marilees, Director of HR. I've talked to Parks and Rec Director. The Golf Pro has a very similar analogous situation that was upheld in court. He reports to the commission, okay, not to the Director of Parks and Rec. Those questions were answered. This is an ordinance. This is an ordinance. This is the legislature. This legislature can pass this ordinance. And while I do respect the town attorney's opinion, there is absolutely nothing wrong with how this ordinance is worded, and there's no reason to delay it whatsoever. And your former email actually says it's okay as far as it goes. It might not be to everybody's liking, to your liking in particular, but it's perfectly okay, and it's perfectly legal. As far as who they report to the commission. They don't have to report to a department head. And as far as the financials, I talked to Bob Meyer, mayor, in the back of the room there. And he said the way the money works right now is okay. It's in the IT budget. That's okay. The ordinance is broadly worded so that we will follow the law. Yes, you would presume a commission would follow the law. You don't have to say, don't break the law. If the professional services that are retained breaks the law, well, there are means to handle that. You don't have to have a supervisor when you hire a professional. And the Ethics Commission can hire lawyers. That's a professional. You don't have to have a supervisor telling them how to do their job. The golf pro, or the guy who runs the golf course, he doesn't have to have a supervisor. If he does something wrong, there will be repercussions. So the ordinance as it's written is absolutely fine. And again, regarding the delay, we got a constitutional challenge on Friday. So we addressed that, and it's moot. So that's no longer an issue. These issues have all been addressed, and there's absolutely no reason to delay this any further. It's been pending since June, and the most recent version has been pending for several months, and this amendment just gets rid of one issue that was raised.
Well, you can pass this if you want, but just for the record, I believe that the Golf Pro reports to Jerry Lombardo on matters of administration.
Well, I've read
So he does have a supervisor.
I've read everything about that, and that's not true.
Representative Walk.
Jay Walk, District 6. Through you, Miss Moderator, to Catherine Braun, Representative Braun.
Yes.
My question to you is, are you a constitutional lawyer? Do you study constitutional law?
And I can tell you, yes, I have studied it. I've taught it to undergrad business law students, but I don't know why that's relevant to this discussion.
Well, I'll explain you the relevance, okay? The relevance is the opinion that we got from an attorney that is a constitutional law, and what this amendment is stating that no elected official...
Representative Walk, we've already decided the constitutionality issue on the past amendment. Thank you. Representative Varian. No, I'm sorry, you stepped off the podium. You can make a motion to call the question and go straight to the public. Okay, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Please raise your hands. Representative Walk, Representative Pierce. Representative Hochberg. Okay, the motion passes. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address this item and this item only? Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll? Sure. I'm sorry. We are now voting on the main motion, which is to pass the Fair TV ordinance as amended. No. Oh, we're on postpone? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right. This is on the motion to postpone. All in favor of postponing this ordinance as amended, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Please raise your hand. Representative Bateson, Representative Hurley, Representative Ambrose, Representative Perugini, please put your hand down when I call your name. Representative Ferentz, Representative McKenzie, Representative Ryan, Representative Way, Representative McCarthy, Representative Waldron, Burstein, McCardle, Pontrelli, Jacob, Zezma, Cargill, boy, this is a Caffarelli, Timniak, Durrell, O'Brien, Lee, Semmel, Farnan, Varian, Palmer, McCullough, Sunman, Meyer, and Lip. Gerber and Malaragno, and Iacono, the item Representative Braun. The item passes. Okay, I've messed up some stuff. I've gotten some things right.
Farnan's still raising his hand.
Okay, now we're back to the main, yes, okay. We have to go to the public, that's in our rules. So would anyone from the public wish to address this item? Seeing none, back to the body. Okay, so do you want a voice call vote and make me call those out? Okay, all in favor of this amendment as amended? Oh.
Ordinance as amended.
Oh, so I have to vote to call the question? I thought we already did that. Oh, God. All right, all in favor of calling the question, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Representative Dean, Representative Hochberg, Representative Walk, Representative Hopkins, Representative Schwartz. I'm sorry, I really am. All right, now back to the motion on the table, which is the Fair TV ordinance. Is there any further discussion on the ordinance? Oh, okay, sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Representative Dean, Representative Hochberg, Representative Walk, Representative Hopkins, Representative Garskoff. Any abstentions? Representative Pierce, Representative Gottlieb, Representative Schwartz. The item passes. Thank you for your patience with me. No. To hear, consider, and act, to hear, consider for the first time the following amendment to 95-15.4 of the Town Code Tax Relief Program, Tax Review Committee. At the first regularly scheduled meeting of January 2016, the representative town meeting shall convene a special committee to review Article 3 of Chapter 95, Tax Relief for Elderly and Disabled Homeowners. May I have a motion to approve? Representative Waldron, seconded by Representative Way. Is there any discussion? No, there's no discussion. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address this item? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. The moderator has referred an alternate side of the street parking restriction ordinance sponsored by Peter Ambrose, Hank Ferentz, Ruth Smay, Liz Zezma, Hal Schwartz, Carol Pantrelli to the Legislation and Administration Committee under Rule 32 of the RTM Rules to Regulate. We can't consider any new business because this is a special meeting. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Right, yes. Representative McCullough, seconded by Representative Lee. Thank you.